Go. Appreciate everybody being here. We'll go ahead and call the San Bruno City Council meeting of March the 9th, 2021 to order. I would ask if we could have roll call by the city clerk, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Mason?
Here.
Councilmember Salazar?
Here.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina?
Here.
And Mayor Rico Medina?
Here. Thank you. And may I please ask for Councilmember Tom Hamilton to lead us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Hamilton. At this time, we'll move on to public comments for items not on the agenda. Individuals will be allowed 3 minutes. It is council policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. If you're interested, if you could at this time raise your hand, and we'll give a minute and see who we have for speaking this evening. We will have the last speaker I'll have mentioned, and then we will proceed from there. Okay.
I see no hands raised, Mayor.
I agree. And we will move on to announcements and presentations. Item number 4. The first one will be to receive a presentation on the San Bruno Community Foundation listening campaign. And for that, we were going to bring in the president of the board. It's nice to see you this evening. We'll put our mics on mute and turn it over to you. And then Leslie, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. If you'll bear with me, I'm just going to share a couple quick slides this evening as well. Can y'all see that okay? All right, thanks. So I want to thank you all for having me here to speak yet again. It's been nice to be at your meetings and to share some happenings that are happening for the foundation. And tonight I'm really here to share with you the exciting news of the foundation's recently launched community listening campaign. And I wanted to first start with our backstory on community listening campaigns, just to make sure everyone knew that previously, when the foundation's work was just getting started back in 2015, we conducted our first community listening campaign to hear directly from the San Bruno community members about their thoughts on community needs and how the restitution funds from the gas pipeline explosion in the Crestmore neighborhood could be used to help address those needs. And thanks to many of you, we had a great response. Out of that effort, we identified focus areas and priorities for our work that have really been guiding for us in the last several years. The direction provided the foundation the ability to launch the Crestmore Scholarship to both honor the Crestmore neighborhood and to invest in our young people. Also the Community Grants Fund, which supports local organizations that are at the heart of our community, and awarded a series of strategic grants, including the Pedestrian Safety Strategic Initiative, lead sponsorship of the city's Community Day in the Park, the Music Education Strategic Initiative in our schools, and the First Responder Effectiveness Strategic Initiative. It is also that community listening campaign I'm talking about provided us the ability to be responsive to emerging needs as they've arisen. And as an example, to assist in the key components of the San Bruno community negatively impacted by the pandemic, SBCF has awarded 6 COVID-19 relief grants totaling $757,000. And I just wanted to go over those quickly, for the benefit of the community as well as you all. A $240,000 grant to the San Bruno Education Foundation to provide all teachers in the San Bruno Park School District with new laptops to ensure that they have up-to-date digital tools as they navigate a new era of distance and hybrid learning. another $10,000 grant to the city of San Bruno to provide home internet access to low-income students through San Bruno CityNet services. A $150,000 grant to San Mateo County Strong Small Business Grant Program, which provided financial assistance to 15 struggling San Bruno businesses. $100,000 to the Child Care Relief Fund, which provided grants to 7 San Bruno child care providers to help them stay afloat through the pandemic. And 2 grants totaling $257,000 to fund the San Bruno Small Business Recovery and Assistance Program, run by the Bay Area Entrepreneur Center of Skyline College, which has provided technical assistance, coaching, and micro grants to help small businesses adapt and reopen. We recently extended our support for that program through 2021, and that program has reached more than 200 local businesses. And through our first grant, 16 businesses received micro grants, and another 15 will receive funding under the second grant that was just approved. But most notably out of the original community listening campaign came a clear priority for new community facilities. We provided funds to the city to conduct a community facilities visioning and prioritization process to identify the top choice for a new facility to be built with the foundation funds. That process, which also included a significant community engagement component as well, led the City Council to identify a new recreation and aquatic center as its top choice and to request that the foundation fund that project. The SBCF board agreed to dedicate $50 million to fund the new recreation and aquatic center, and has been doing so through a series of grants covering the different parts of the project. So now that the city has designed that facility, gone out to bid for the general contractor, and will soon break ground on that project, we're now at a time that we believe as a foundation it's timely to go back to the community for feedback as we near the point when all $50 million of the RAC funds are paid out and our investment portfolio will be significantly reduced. Which brings us to the present. At the end of February, we launched our community listening campaign 2.0, as we've been referring to it. And through a survey, focus groups, and town hall meetings, we're soliciting community input on 3 topics. Number 1 is the evaluation of the foundation's work thus far. Number 2, current community needs. And number 3, recommendations regarding priorities and strategies for the foundation's next phase of our work. The Public Dialogue Consortium, the firm who led our previous community listening campaign, is also supporting this current effort. And hopefully you've all seen our recent social media pushes and/or this postcard, just sharing it here for reference. This postcard was sent to every residential and commercial address in town, inviting community members to both take the survey via the link to the website, which is noted, or using the QR code, and also talking about the upcoming town hall meetings, which I'll talk about in a moment. If you have this at your home, just to note, the information is here for you to access, presuming you have internet access. Next slide I just wanted to share is again about the survey. It's a short survey. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes of your time to complete it. Those who don't have computer or smartphone access can request a paper survey by emailing the address at the bottom of your screen you'll see, and or calling the phone number to request a paper copy. And you'll also see, again here, the URL for the survey on our website, as well as the QR code, which you can just scan and go directly to the survey. The survey runs through March 31st and is available in both English and Spanish. And we encourage all community members to take the survey, as we really want to hear from as broad a cross-section of our community as possible. Again, this is really important information that will help to guide the work of the foundation going forward. We're also holding a series of focus groups to ensure that we hear from representatives of key stakeholder and demographic groups. That includes 2 special focus groups for harder to reach populations. One of those teens and young adults, and another is our Spanish-speaking community. Again, those are targeted, and then there are others open to other individuals. We want to make sure we hear from those targeted groups as well. And once the consultants compile the results from the survey and focus groups, they will be presenting them back to the community 2 times at 2 separate town hall meetings scheduled for April 20th and 26th. The goal of the town hall meetings is to refine what was heard through the survey and focus groups. The consultants will then produce a report documenting those findings, which will launch our board strategic planning deliberations starting in May. And it's worth mentioning also that in January and February, the board participated in diversity, equity, and inclusion sessions to begin more intentionally thinking about what it means to commit to DEI as a community foundation. We intend to incorporate those learnings as we develop the strategic plan for the next phase of the foundation's work once it's paid out the Recreation and Aquatic Center grants. Again, just to note, we're really interested to learn what the community sees as top priorities right now and recommendations for how we can best meet those needs moving forward. We look forward to sharing with the council and the public what we've learned through the campaign, and we really hope you'll help us to encourage other community members to participate by taking the survey and attending the town hall meetings. Just wanted to thank you again for the opportunity to share this with all of you tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions as I'm able. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Do we have comments or questions from my colleagues? Then we'll see if anybody from the audience. Councilmember Mason.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask if the previous minutes for the previous focus groups would be available to provide a background to the public of kind of how we got here and what had been maybe requested in the past, to see how the future might still allow for some of those requests if they're still warranted.
I see Leslie turning on her screen, so I might defer to you, Leslie, if you're want to answer.
Leslie.
We do have the report, a very comprehensive report from our community listening campaign from 2015. It is posted on our website. I believe at least a summary is, if not the whole report, and we're happy to post the whole report, but I believe it is there.
Okay, great.
So that's available.
Okay, great. And then, and I also just wanted to compliment you. I really appreciate the youth, like the young adults group, I'll call it, and the Spanish focus group. I think it's really important, and I'm really glad to see that the foundation took that into account. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really looking forward to having feedback from those targeted groups too.
Other questions from colleagues? If not seeing any at this time, we do have a member of the public that has their hand up, and City Clerk, if you could please bring them in.
Yes, Malcolm Robinson. Just one moment while I bring you in. Hi, Malcolm. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Malcolm Robinson, 32-year resident of San Bruno. Mr. Mayor, you were a little quick to cut off public comments there. I thought I had my hand raised in time, but I guess I missed out. So I'll just address the work of the foundation. You've done a lot to bring facilities and energy and support for San Bruno to help bring us together. San Bruno is made up of disparate neighborhoods, and you are making an effort, unlike other organizations, to bring us together, to create a sense of community, to bring things together. So $50 million for the rec center at a time when the city council had slashed the aquatics budget 20%. This year we didn't even have a pool. So I would ask that you keep your strong efforts to build a sense of community, and I thank you for your good work.
Malcolm?
Yep.
Malcolm?
Yes.
You only took a short time, so if you want to take about a minute or whatever, since you really didn't use a lot of your time to say whatever else you had.
Okay. Last night I had trouble sleeping. I trying to figure out what I wanted to say today. In the movie Lincoln, that's running on HBO, on San Bruno Cable, for those who can afford it now, there's a scene in the Congress where Representative Wood is trying to get the goat of Thaddeus Stevens, the famous Thaddeus Stevens. And Thaddeus Stevens responds that he thinks that people should be equal before the law, equal before the city, equal, as opposed to favoring certain groups over favoring other groups. So as you go through with this fee reconciliation, in the state of the city, I didn't see any remarks about, the fee structure or, budget difficulties that we have to raise fees dramatically, which would have been nice to give some context for that. But as you set these fees, as you go through with this flood zone addition to our city taxes and property taxes, that you keep in mind the sense of equity and the sense of equality before the law, equality before all other things. And I wish you'd keep that in mind. And I also wish that you would have water aerobics again. So it's a great way to bring people together. 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I brought a petition to the city council asking that you keep daytime water aerobics open for the third month of September, as we had the previous years. The city council decided not to do that. But at those water aerobics sessions, it's mainly like 3 guys and maybe 10 to 40 women, and they're exercising, talking. The late city clerk, Carol, used to go to that on weekday mornings, and it was a sense of community. Often we have 2 and 3 generations of people there, and I miss that. I miss the exercise. It blew out my knee playing softball and athletics over the years, and I'm in my late 60s. I'm retired, so I need to exercise in a weightless water environment. So please think of water aerobics as you're adding swim lessons, which I would agree is another essential service to the city. And also, there's different cities, so not divide us, not have San Bruno residents pay a different fee than others. Form a collaborative environment with Pacifica, with Millbrae, with South City, so that we can all work out and build a sense of community in the North Peninsula. So thank you for the extra time, Mr. Mayor. Take care.
No problem, and thank you for your understanding. Okay, I appreciate that. And so unless there are any other comments or questions on this presentation, I would want to thank Leslie and Emily for being here, and thank you for outreaching to the community. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Mason.
I just wanted to compliment the report that was given at Wednesday night's meeting. The new aquatic center looks amazing, and I was just wondering if the City Council will have an opportunity to take a look at that. It was almost like a virtual reality tour, and anyway, I was just hoping that we would get that as well, or the rest of the council members could view that.
Okay, thank you. I see another hand up, and if it needs to be for the presentation by the Community Foundation Listening Campaign. So before I let you two go, oh, okay. So all right, I don't see the hand now. Okay, why don't we continue? Again, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item B, receive annual report from the Planning Commission. And here we're going to have the chair, Kelly, if you would. There we are.
Kelly, I'm trying to help you get your video turned on. There you are.
Okay, thank you for bringing me in. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Kelly Lathine, and I served as the Planning Commission Chair January through December of 2020. And our current chair, Rick Biasotti, has asked me to give our annual presentation to you tonight. Next slide, thank you. Tonight we will begin with an introduction of the 2020 Planning Commission members and planning staff. We'll briefly review the role of Planning Commission, and then I will share significant accomplishments that we have reviewed and considered in 2020. And then I'll conclude my presentation with the projects that we are currently looking at that are in progress, and then the Commission's 2021 outlook. Next slide. We'll go into our introduction of Planning Commissioners. We are. I was for 2020 acting as the chair, and our vice chair was Rick Biasotti. And as of January 2021, Commissioner Rick Biasotti has been elected to chair, and Commissioner Aros Ansberg-Harmon is now the vice chair. And in October of 2020, we welcomed a new commissioner, Gerard Madden, but we did lose a wonderful Commissioner, Tom Hamilton. He was elected to City Council in November. Congratulations. And there is currently one vacancy in our commission. Next slide, please. We will introduce our planning staff. Pamela Wu is our Community and Economic Development Director, and currently she's also serving as the Secretary to the Planning Commission in the absence of the city's Planning and Housing Manager. Next slide. We will talk about the duties and purposes of the Planning Commission. We are a 7-member quasi-judiciary body, and we provide input and advise City Council. The Commission administers zoning subdivision ordinances in conjunction with the general plan and reviewing and approving private development applications. The Commission encourages the public to participate in land use policies pertinent to the physical growth of San Bruno. 3 varying members of the Planning Commission also serve on the Architectural Review Committee, and the Planning Commission meets mostly on the 3rd Tuesday of each month. Next slide. And as I'd mentioned, each month the Planning Commission members, 3 various Planning Commission members volunteer to serve on the Architectural Review Committee. There, we review and we make recommendations on development project applications. And the Architectural Review Committee normally meets on the Thursday before the Planning Commission meeting. Next slide. We'll go over the highlights of 2020. And like it did for everyone, the pandemic changed our format for us. So the Planning Commission, we took a short break at the beginning of the shelter in place, and then we resumed our meetings via Zoom in May of 2020. Next slide. Okay. In May, the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended City Council approval of a new ordinance regulating short-term rentals. The new ordinance provides regulatory control for short-term rentals, providing a mechanism for the city to proactively identify the properties, regulate their use, and collect applicable permit fees and taxes, including business license tax and transient occupancy tax. The City Council reviewed and adopted these regulations in July. In August, the Commission held a study session to review and provide comments on the 2nd phase of the zoning code update. The update focuses on bringing zoning into alignment with the city's transit corridor plan, the TCP, and the housing element. The update also brings the city's ADU, density bonus, and the affordable housing requirement into alignment with recent state law updates. Okay, next slide. Other highlights include the approval of the city's Recreation and Aquatic Center in May, and that includes the demolition of the existing Veterans Memorial Building and the San Bruno Park Pool to allow construction of a new 2-story and approximately 49,360 square foot San Bruno Recreation and Aquatic Center. Also, the approval of the Stratford School at 201 Balboa. It allowed the establishment of a new private school kindergarten at the former El Crystal site. And unfortunately, the city was recently informed by the school district that the Stratford School has withdrawn its interest. Later in October, the Commission also reviewed and recommended that City Council approve and extend the 1996 development agreement for the 1400 and 1450 Bay Hill Drive development. So you saw that as well. In the course of 2020, the Commission also approved 5 other single-family residential conditional use permit projects and a new child care center at 250 Cortland Drive. The Architectural Review Committee committee reviewed 6 residential projects, the proposed remodel at Artichoke Joe's Casino, and we authorized a facade change to allow a new liquor store to occupy the former Don Pico's restaurant site at El Camino Real. Now we'll look into 2021 for the Commission. There we go. There are several major projects that are coming before the Commission in 2021. These large projects include completion of the second phase of the zoning code update, recommendation of the final adoption of the Bay Hill specific plan, and the approval for the YouTube phase 1 development. The Commission will also be making recommendations to City Council regarding approval of several development projects. These projects include a residential development on Glenview Terrace Drive, including a total of 29 single-family dwellings. There's a new 28-room hotel at 160 El Camino Real. And then at 271 El Camino Real is a project for a 23-unit townhome development. And then we'll move on to the 2021 outlook. Several other entitlement projects have begun preliminary review with the planning department, including redevelopment of the former Crestmore High School site on Piedmont Avenue, the former Crossing Hotel site, the vacant site that's at 170 San Bruno Avenue, and the former Engval School site. And so these are some really big and exciting projects coming our way for 2021. And Pamela, our Community and Economic Development Director, is here to provide any information that you would like on these projects if you are interested. And that concludes the end of my presentation. Please let Pamela or I know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Kelly, very much for your report. Questions from colleagues? Not seeing any, and at this time, and I'm seeing none from the public at this time either. So therefore, we want to thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your time with us. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and please pass on to your colleagues our thanks and appreciation for their time and efforts.
Thank you very much. Will do. Take care.
Take care. Good night. Let's move on to item C, receive update on COVID-19 response efforts. Jennifer Dianos, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. We're just pulling up the presentation now, so you'll see that in just a moment. My name is Jennifer Dianos, and I'm the assistant to the city manager for the city of San Bruno, and I'm here on behalf of the EOC Public Information Team to give you a local update on COVID-19. On the screen is a brief agenda of what I'll go over this evening, including our current red tier status, local statistics, COVID-19 vaccine information. I'll highlight 2 local programming modifications, and we'll end the presentation by being available for questions that I and the City Manager Grogan will answer. First is the blueprint for a safer economy. So we're all familiar with this tier reopening plan after so many months, and our status has not changed. So I have no new information for you this evening. For the last couple of weeks, we've been in the red tier or the substantial tier, and will remain in the same tier this upcoming week. This means no changes to business modifications at this time. The state reviews local statistics on a weekly basis and announces changes mostly on Tuesdays. That schedule is subject to change, of course, if there are any dramatic changes to our metrics. And the information in front of you is from earlier today. The highlight here is that our local statistics or metrics are looking very positive. We must remain in any given tier for at least 3 weeks before moving to a less restrictive tier. And on the screen are the requirements to move to the next orange tier. And so you'll see that we are looking really good in that orange tier there. In regards to local statistics, there are a total of 39,184 total cases in San Mateo County, a total of 525 deaths. This is an increase from my last report to you. However, the rate of increase has drastically declined since previous reports. In San Bruno, there are a total of 2,202 cases. This is just about 50 local cases more than my last report to you. On a positive note, as cases in the county decrease, as our cases increase, our statistics for vaccinations increase. And so just under 178,000 individuals that have been vaccinated. That includes 76,262 of which have completed the entire vaccination series. I think I may have said that backwards actually, so I just want to correct it for the record. Our cases in the county have decreased and our statistics for vaccinations have increased. Later this week and next week, the county will host the second round of vaccinations at the local mass vaccination site. And so this number of vaccinations will likely increase very soon. Please only show up to the site if you have an appointment. These are for those that have registered already. In San Bruno, there's 28.5% of our population that have received a form of the vaccination. This is not necessarily the full series, and at our last meeting, Councilmember Hamilton, you inquired if the county would provide that information in the form of a statistic. At this time, that stat is not broken down by zip code. It's only based on the percentage of our community for some form of vaccination, but the request was passed along to the county. There are additional statistics online that show the vaccination demographics by age and by race. However, it's available in terms of countywide numbers and not by zip code or San Bruno specific. Next is the COVID-19 vaccine. The county continues the vaccination distribution process in accordance with the state's guidance. There is a link on the screen to connect to the state site that provides more information on when one will be eligible to receive the vaccination. This is subject to be adjusted as the vaccination rollout continues. It's why it's so important to register for the state site to receive notification when you're eligible. That site is myturn.ca.gov, or for those that don't have internet access, phone option is available, and that number is 833-422-4255. For those that do not have online access, they could call the number. The local notification system that the county put together, it'll soon transition to My Turn system. And so as mentioned before, you should go and register and also stay in contact with your primary care physician. The allocation by dose and the administration of the vaccine is a very complex system. And on the screen, you'll see the variety of program administrators involved in the vaccine rollout. Eventually, there will be enough doses to vaccinate anyone who wants the free vaccination. So again, please sign up at myturn.ca.gov to receive notification and allow those that are most vulnerable to receive the vaccination in an orderly manner. The county has partnered with several local groups to help outreach to local communities that's in our local jurisdiction and countywide. And it's the communities that may have barriers in receiving information, including language and technology barriers. And we'll continue to work with the county to assist in these efforts and to make sure that our San Bruno community stays informed. The CDC recently released information about gatherings once individuals are fully vaccinated. Fully vaccinated is defined as 2 weeks after completing the full series of a 2-dose or a single-dose vaccine, depending on which vaccine you receive. There is a link on the CDC website on the screen here, and although you're fully vaccinated, you'll still need to take precautions, including wearing a mask, social distancing, avoiding crowds, and poorly ventilated spaces. And not on the screen, but worth noting, the state recently recommended the wearing of double masks, and that includes a cloth mask on top of a disposable mask. After being fully vaccinated, you should still avoid all medium and large size gatherings. You should delay travel and always be aware of symptoms. And again, the CDC website is on the screen, which you can link to learn more and to get a complete list of current recommendations. As you know, our EOC team is always evaluating our local operations as we continue in our response to COVID. A very popular event that usually brings many local communities to San Bruno Park, known as the Easter egg hunt, has been modified and personalized. Unfortunately, there will not be a community Easter egg hunt, but we have something that's even better, or a better alternative at the very least. Our recreation team has developed Youth Bin Eggs by San Bruno's famous Peter Cottontail. And for those that register, baskets of goodies will be dropped off during the designated days in March and April. Each basket is $10, and you can register on the city website to participate in the program. Another modification made this year due to COVID is the annual State of the City address. Usually the city would hold the address and community members would attend. However, this year we recorded the address. It was recorded at the gym located in the Recreation Center, which also allowed us to record prior to our new Recreation and Aquatic Center project progressing. It was nice to be able to capture the essence of the building, which was and is the home to many memories to our community and those that have played, worked, and visited our gym. So if you haven't already watched State of the City address, you can link to it from this presentation, or you could get to it from our homepage. And before I move on to the close of my presentation, I do want to say that last Friday, March 5th, marked San Bruno's first step in dealing with COVID-19, and that was the day that we began changing operations, all in an effort to keep our community safe. We've all been through a lot since then, and although our county metrics are improving and the vaccination rollout becomes more available, we continue to urge you to continue doing your part because it's truly a community effort. So please continue to wear your mask, social distance, and wash your hands. And with that, I remind everyone to stay connected and am available for any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your report. Are there any questions from colleagues? Councilmember Mason.
Okay, thank you for your report. I just wanted to ask about, so today I'm looking at my notes, but I saw on Instagram that the city posted that the pool is now permanently closed due to the construction of the new aquatic center. And so given that we just had the question about the pool, and then I think I did ask at the last meeting as well, where is the city around reopening of the programs that we will have? The San Bruno Park School District went back to school yesterday. So as a parent, I'm already thinking about summer camps. Is anything going to be available for the kids? And I am curious to know if the city is working on the next steps and when we would plan to receive a report on that.
And before a response by manager, Jennifer, could you take down the screen from sharing it, please? And thank you. And then whoever would like to respond.
Councilmember Javon Grogan, City Manager. I can respond. And Director Ann Latola, if you have anything to add, please come into the room. So as we said at the last council meeting, the city is fully aligned to the state's reopening plan, specifically the color-coded system. We have provided council with the chart on what outdoor recreation programs are allowed based on the color-coded system. We have not had a change in the color-coded status since the last meeting, so thus we're not announcing any reopening of activities. We are in the middle of planning our summer activities, and so we're not ready to announce that just yet, but we will do that soon.
And then just an announcement from the county vaccination equity group that I'm in. There have been announcements now around vaccination placed on the Pacific Islander radio stations and the Spanish language radio stations. And they're working on a vaccination clinic that'll be a drop-in. I believe it's going to be announced any day now, but my understanding is that it's going to be in Daly City. So just an FYI to keep an eye out for that release when it comes out. Thank you.
Any other questions from colleagues? Seeing no hands, thank you very much again.
Mayor,
I apologize, Vice Mayor Medina.
No, that was my fault. I was trying to unmute and raise my hand at the same time. So for those that don't know, baseball is back in San Bruno. You know, San Bruno Youth Baseball, it's one of a really thing closest to my heart in baseball, in San Bruno, is the baseball programs, and just wanted to just remind everybody how it's a difficult decision for our family to kind of go ahead and go into that, just that how important it is to still be safe, and the coaches are doing their part to to maintain that distance and with the kids and I just want to remind everybody that to still, even though we're doing that, you be careful and do the basics and wash your hands and let's continue to stay safe and wear your mask whenever possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, colleagues? Okay, why don't we move on? I know this isn't on the agenda, but I do want to add an announcement that I received some notification earlier, and that was for our city clerk who received the Master Municipal Clerk designation, which means taking classes and going through training, and it's just the highest level of that, which she has now been given that honor. So we wanted to say congratulations to our city clerk for achieving that and getting that.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
A number of residents went through a power outage with PG&E. I was wondering if the city manager could give a little update on that and also remind residents how to get on their PG&E's notification system so that when there is a power outage, how to be more advised of what's going on.
So the city manager probably is not prepared for this, but you were keeping us updated a little bit, but you can give a summarization to, and that's today. It is what the Vice Mayor is referencing.
Again, Javon Grogan, City Manager. I'm currently looking at my text just to remind myself approximately when it occurred. But it was approximately at about 3:30 today. There was a large PG&E power outage at a PG&E substation in South San Francisco. The outage initially affected about 20,000 customers in South San Francisco, San Bruno, and Brisbane. Shortly thereafter, the city was notified by PG&E that they were switching power to another substation, and so literally within 20 minutes, the number of customers that were out dropped in half. And then shortly thereafter, I want to say certainly less than an hour, maybe even less than 30 minutes, most properties in San Bruno were restored. No word yet from PG&E on the cause of the outage. I do not know specifically if PG&E has a registration system to be notified of outages, but I do know that PG&E does automatically notify customers of outages based on the contact information in your account. And so they have several notification systems based on the severity. And also, if you go to the main PG&E website, right on the bottom of that screen is a service outage map that is typically very up to date within minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Now we're going to move on to item 5, consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented by an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. Before we get into the consent, on consent item 5E, E as in Edward, I'm going to be asking for that to be moved to conduct of business. So that I'm asking for that 5E again to be moved from consent to conduct of business, and will be more detailed information and presentation. So with that off, we have A, B, C, D, and F under consent. Is there anyone that wants something pulled separately for a separate vote? Is there anyone that has an item that they just want to ask a question or make a comment? Councilmember Mason.
It actually may just be really quick. I don't even know if we need to pull it. I just want to make sure I had sent an email to the city clerk about the minutes from our last meeting. And if the city clerk, unless I need to explain them, if those were made, then I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, I did receive the email, and earlier today when I sent an email to council explaining that after reviewing the minutes, there was a question made about comments that Council Member Michael Salazar made regarding his appointment on the Measure K committee. And after reviewing the minutes and speaking with staff and Councilmember Salazar, I think it's best if we just strike that entire portion from the minutes because it really wasn't germane to any of the topics that we had discussed. And if you look at it, say 20 years from now, you probably wouldn't even know why that comment was made. And so we felt it best to just remove that from the minutes. So the minutes will be amended to remove Councilmember Salazar's comments from the previous February 23rd meeting from the minutes.
Okay, great. And just so we're not talking cryptically, the comment that had been made by Councilmember Salazar had to do with a correction that Mayor Medina was making around who was on the Transit Authority. And I believe that Councilmember Salazar said something like, no, I'm on the Measure K, you're on the Transit Authority. And so I just wanted to make sure that it was accurate. I'm completely fine with striking it, but it just that it wasn't reflective of what was actually said. So that solves the problem. Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad we're striking that because I differ with that. So, but I appreciate bringing up. Yes, there was an email that came out, and it was more on the oversight element. But okay, so with that said, since nothing has been pulled, is there any actions that council would like to take in regards to consent, with the exception of item E?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Salazar Hamilton, a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Mason?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina?
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina?
Aye. Okay. Thank you, folks. And then let's move on to conduct of business. And I'm going to ask the city manager, do you wish us to take it in order of A first, or did you want to have the 5E taken on first?
Let's take 5E first because it was in the consent calendar.
All right. So the city clerk, I will turn it over to you for conduct of business, and we will move the 5E for adoption of the resolution.
Item 5E, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for consultant services with WRECO for pre-design support on the regional stormwater capture project at I-280 and I-380 in an amount not to exceed $996,240.58, and execute a Caltrans cooperative agreement for the project initiation document phase.
City manager.
Sure. Council members and members of the public, I've asked our city engineer, Haywan Ritchie, to give a presentation of this item. In many ways, this is a standard consent item, a matter of general consent because we're moving forward with design services on a contract that for a project that is largely grant funded. However, there's been a lot of talk about our stormwater system as well as the city's process and ability to receive grants, and highlighting this project is a wonderful example of the work that staff done to seek a grant that it will provide several $1 million to benefit the city of San Bruno and helping us with our stormwater capture, as well as having regional benefits downstream. And so Haywan Ritchie, our city engineer, will provide a full presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and thank you, City Manager Grogan, for that introduction. So the item before I have you tonight is the authorization of a consultant agreement for pre-design services for the regional stormwater capture project at I-280 and I-380. The objectives for tonight include my providing background information on the project, the grants obtained, Caltrans process and project phase information, as well as requesting council action to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with RECO for pre-design support and a cooperative agreement with Caltrans. This slide shows the agenda, which breaks down into greater detail the components of the previous slide objectives, which is an overview of the storm drain system, the grants obtained, project concept and background, project phasing, staff recommendation, and council questions, public comment, council deliberation, and action. So as you are already aware, the city maintains a network of storm drains that capture stormwater runoff and convey them by gravity to surface waters, which for San Bruno is San Bruno Channel, and then eventually to San Francisco Bay. There are three primary aspects of the system. This includes the main trunk lines, for which the tributary residential system that feed into the main trunk lines. And then there's a regional component, which includes considerations for water quality and flow. In 2014, the City Council adopted the Storm Drain Master Plan, and this covered the trunk lines of the system, so not the small tributary lines, but the trunk lines. And at the time, there was a recommendation in 2014 of $26+ million worth of capital projects to address capacity issues. The residential system is the network of that you see now in your residential streets, gutters, inlets, pipes, I guess you wouldn't see underground, but they're underground, and then ditches. There's this third component, which is the regulatory component, and that focuses on water quality and flow. The city is part of the municipal regional permit, and that requires the city to achieve certain goals for removal of trash and other pollutants entering the system. The city adopted a green infrastructure plan in 2019, which creates greater emphasis on city projects in the right-of-way that create fire retention capabilities. So the item before you tonight addresses the last component, which is the regional component. So I wanted to start off by mentioning that this project is fully grant funded. There was no requirement for any local match. Staff responded to a call for projects by the county for regional scale projects. So the county had retained a consultant, requested various projects that were large in scale that would have a regional impact. And so the grants that we received at the time are a $200,000 EPA water quality improvement grant, as well as a $913,000 approximately California Natural Resources Agency grant. There are deadlines associated with those grants. For EPA's the end of the year, and for the CNRA grant, it's March of 2022. So the regional, I did want to provide a little bit of background as to the genesis of the regional project. So in June of 2018, San Mateo County solicited regional project scales. They retained a consultant Paradigm to develop regional scale projects in the county. The city had proposed this project. The municipal regional permit will continue to require greater stringent levels of requirements such as trash and pollutant removals, and they are just becoming more strict with time, and they're imposed on the region and state level. This particular project was estimated to cost approximately $20 million, which is really separate from the $26+ million identified in the master plan. The goals of this regional project would be to remove trash, pollutants, and detain, if possible, infiltrate stormwater. It's a bit too soon to tell, if we can do that, but that is the goal of this project, is to identify the capabilities for that. So this map shows the watershed area. It's approximately 940 acres estimated. This is very high level conceptual. It's really looking at a bird's eye view. It would have to be, more closely identified. The project elements are identified during the pre-design and the design phase. So as you can see, the direct benefit of the project is San Bruno. Almost all the entire area is in San Bruno. I will mention that there is this area in purple, which you may recognize as 280 and 35, which is Caltrans right-of-way. There's approximately 40 acres of Caltrans right-of-way. However, again, this is in San Bruno and leads into our storm system. This slide shows, again, a very high-level conceptual level design. Again, with conversations for Caltrans, we need to work out the details. I also do want to mention that this project is funding driven. Our obligations for these grants are to further designs for the project. However, we will take a stepwise approach to identifying funding and making progress on the project. And I will discuss a little bit more about the funding aspect later in the presentation. So there are several project benefits. This helps to meet our regional water board requirements. It also does have the effect of alleviating flooding issues downstream. The regional permit does not address flooding. However, with the detention, with capture, we are able to slow the rate of which the water flows into the system and thereby alleviate some of the flooding downstream. I did hear previously mentioned about equity, and the lower lying areas would see a benefit. It is a significant investment, but there are benefits. And lastly, after construction, the surface area would be restored. However, I-280/380 is on Caltrans right-of-way, and so as things go with Caltrans, there is quite a process in order to get a project like this approved. We would need to get permits, and there would need to be various agreements. And one of the items before you tonight is the cooperative agreement. These would need to be developed over time as the project scope is further discerned. And there is the Caltrans oversight process. I just listed a bunch of acronyms. Those are what Caltrans call them, but needless to say, it is a process. The PID phase is the project initiation document, which is sort of the pre-design. And then there's the PA&ED, which is a project approval and environmental document. So this particular item looks at those two components. Funding is a concern. We will have to find, we expect to find funding on a regional level, and the county is also interested in this, and so they would be in partnership with us. And then continuing on that thread, the operations and maintenance, we would be looking at the newly developed flood and sea level rise resiliency district to help fund the operations and maintenance of this new system. So in May, the county, along with the city of Redwood City, who was also a grant recipient, as well as San Bruno, issued a request for proposals on the county's public purchase platform. The city received 8 proposals in June. 2 firms were interviewed, and RECO was selected, really due to their extensive knowledge of Caltrans and their ability to navigate through that process. So RECO's proposal, the total was about $2.6 million, and as was previously shown in another slide, we have about $1.1 million in grants, and so that would not be enough to support, the entire design, including design support during construction. So we have 2 phases. Phase 1 would be the pre-design, which is just about $1 million, and phase 2 would be the rest of the actual design, permitting, design support during construction, which is about $1.4 million. Our project budget allows for an authorization of phase 1. I did want to mention regarding the EPA grant, the county did let us know that we would need to enter an agreement with them, and so likely in the future, as a consent item, we will be taking forward that grant. They've already let us know that we've been awarded. However, we do still need to enter into an agreement. As part of this project, we will need to take a phased approach because there's also a component of Caltrans cooperative agreement, which pays for Caltrans staff time to help process this project. The exact costs are currently unknown, and because there is some benefit to Caltrans, we are trying to approach Caltrans into potentially sharing in the cost. They have not denied that, but I think we're still working through that. And so until we know exactly the terms of our agreement, right now what we propose to do is to authorize the PID phase, the project initiation document phase, for $340,000, work with Caltrans. I think that will give us a head start, and then execute a Caltrans agreement. Once we know exactly what our costs are with Caltrans, we would then propose to authorize RECO for a portion of the project approval and environmental document phase. Which, given how much Caltrans may require, it may only be a portion of that phase. And staff will continue to seek grant funding. So staff recommendation tonight is to execute an agreement for consultant services with RECO for pre-design support on the regional stormwater capture project at I-280 and I-380 in an amount not to exceed $996,240. and execute a Caltrans and allow the city manager to execute a Caltrans cooperative agreement for the project initiation document phase. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions from council.
Thank you very much for your report. Questions from colleagues? Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, a couple thank yous. Thank you, Mayor, for putting this to conduct of business, approving $900,000 on a consent agenda without getting this type of additional information is difficult. And thanks to staff for putting this together real quick, and also for all the work behind obtaining these grants. So maybe the terminology that I have is a little bit different, but so pretty much this is similar to a feasibility study on how this system would work. So we are at the very preliminary phase of this design, so we won't yet know the beneficial impacts to the flooding problems until later. But I am in support of this, and I thank everybody for the work behind it.
Councilmember Hamilton.
So really quick, because the Vice Mayor said most of what I intended to say. So that and I also thank everyone for pulling this together so quickly. The reason I wanted this to be pulled is it was unclear from the what was on the agenda that this was being paid for by grants. And that's so important to understand, you know, as a casual observer going down the agenda would see, you know, the city is spending almost $1 million on this. And we're not. We're, you know, the staff went out and sought grants for this important project that's needed in our city. And it's not going to come, the cost of this is not going to come out of our stormwater fund. It's not going to come out of our general fund. And if we don't accept this and don't spend those grant monies, we lose them. So this absolutely makes sense, and I'll be in support of it. Thank you.
Councilmember Mason.
I echo all the other comments. I just wanted to focus for a minute, though. My questions are more around the cooperative agreement. You mentioned that there would be other agreements that would come forth, and I want to make sure those agreements are going to be coming before council as we move forward.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then I also just wanted to request that as these conditions are being negotiated, that we're also taking into consideration that these locations are huge areas of concern for a lot of the dumping, which I'm sure impacts the stormwater. And if there is a way to negotiate into those agreements, facilitating cleanups on a regular basis, I think now is the time to start having those discussions. I know that's been said before, I've said it before, but we haven't had the opportunity to actually talk about it in the form of an agreement. So whether it be this cooperative agreement or a future agreement that is going to be necessary, I think now is the time to have that conversation and to work it into these negotiations. Thank you.
Any other comments? I would say they're already, Caltrans does have, whether it's not perfect and not meeting our, as a community's expectations, they do have a routine that they go through District 4, Regional 4, I'm sorry, for that. So I'm not sure legally and technically whether you can count something else that is not even connected with that and say, well, it's either all or nothing. As was indicated too, this is a grant, and Councilmember Hamilton, I think it is important to bring those situations up so the community understands too. Just like we have to pass a resolution, and if we don't, we're not going to be eligible for the money, which it's like, well, why do you have to pass it? It's just sometimes it's part of that process. But I want to thank staff and the comments that have already been made for putting this together. Let's see if there's anybody from the community that would like to speak. Seeing none at this time, I'll bring it back to council. This is a resolution for adoption. Any action by council?
Through the mayor?
Yes.
I will make a motion that we adopt the resolution to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement for consultant services with WRECO for pre-design support on the regional stormwater capture project at I-280 and I-380 in an amount not to exceed $996,240.58, and execute a Caltrans cooperative agreement for the project initiation document phase.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
I
Hamilton
memorized
and
all of that.
Hamilton and Medina. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Mason,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina,
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to going to our next item of conduct of business. City Clerk.
Item 6A, adopt resolution approving 40 feet of yellow curb striping in front of 500 and 508 San Mateo Avenue, 40 feet of yellow curb on the north side of Angus Avenue from the end of existing red curb to 40 feet westerly of the existing red curb, 30 feet westerly from San Mateo curb return to 70 feet westerly from San Mateo curb return, and 20 feet of green curb in front of 501 San Mateo Avenue.
Okay. City manager, or I'm going to assume who's going to be doing it, but I don't want to make that assumption. But I see.
Sure.
Play it again. Go ahead, please.
This presentation will be given by our city engineer, Haywan Ritchie. Haywan, please proceed.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening again. My name is Haywan Ritchie, the city's city engineer. The item I have before you tonight is a request to approve various downtown loading zones on San Mateo Avenue or in around San Mateo Avenue in downtown. The objectives for tonight include providing background information on the development of the downtown loading zones, present the proposed loading zones, and recommend City Council approve two-space yellow loading zone at 500 and 508 San Mateo Avenue, two-space yellow loading zone on north side of Angus Avenue at near 600 San Mateo Avenue, and a one-space green zone at 501 San Mateo Avenue. This map shows approximate vicinity location, so San Mateo Avenue in downtown. So this would be between El Camino and Huntington. This slide provides some background information regarding San Mateo Avenue. San Mateo Avenue is an arterial roadway. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour, one lane in each direction, in a generally north-south direction, with parking on both sides and the solid double yellow center line. There's 2-hour parking limit from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. Double parking was identified as an issue, and I would like to know that they're looking at the history of collisions. We did not see a history of collisions that appear related to vehicles stopped in travel lane or on driving on the wrong side of the road. So loading zones were mentioned in 2 planning documents. The first is the downtown parking study adopted in 2019. This planning study recommended temporary loading zones in front of businesses with heavy drop-off for afternoon school activities. And also in 2019, the San Mateo Avenue Conceptual Streetscape Plan was adopted. This particular plan recommended white curb in front of La Petite Boline. And I would like to note that this item went before City Council in November of 2020. This plan also recommended 3 yellow curb loading zones, widely spaced apart along the street. The item before you tonight is 2 yellow zones and 1 green zone. So I would like to take a minute to describe what yellow, green, and white zones signify. These are from our Municipal Code Section 7.16.020 for curb markings. Yellow means no stopping, standing for any purpose other than loading or unloading of passengers or materials. Passengers for 3 minutes and materials for 20 minutes. Green curb means no stopping, standing, or parking for a period longer than 24 minutes, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. And a white zone is no stopping, standing, or parking for any purpose other than loading or unloading of passengers or depositing mail not to exceed 3 minutes. And I would like to include that yellow and white zones, the hours are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Except Sundays and holidays. So the original item that went before TSPC back in December of 2020 included very alternate locations, some of which are brought before you tonight. Those include in front of 501 and 508 San Mateo Avenue. So these were the locations previously proposed to TSPC. There's La Petite Baline at 434 again, City Council approved that in November of 2020. In front of 453 here, in front of the Teamsters Union, 40 feet of yellow zone were proposed. And just to clarify, 40 feet is approximately 2 parking spaces because each parking space is approximately 20 feet. And then moving further east, so 500 and 508 San Mateo Avenue in front of Hanlin and Dreams Hair and Beauty Salon. There was 40 feet of yellow zone proposed. In front of the Starbucks, 20 feet of green zone. And in the 600 block, in front of 681 and 685, which is the Ninja Sushi and Star Performer Salon, 40 feet of yellow zone. And so the original proposal did propose 3 locations widely spread apart along San Mateo Avenue to alleviate issues with double parking. Sorry, I think I skipped a slide there. So after we went to TSPC, we did receive input from TSPC, and what you have before you tonight is a proposal to City Council that takes into consideration TSPC's input. So now the proposed locations in City Council, this one at Baline has already been approved. 501, 508, and 500 remain unchanged. The location on the 600 block was moved to the north side of Angus, near 600 San Mateo Avenue, near the Grand Leader. This site recommends 40 feet of yellow zone on Angus Avenue. These are street views of the various zones. So on the top here, you have 500, 508 San Mateo Avenue, 40 feet of yellow zone. It's near the end of the block. There's the first 2 stalls in the bay. There is parking in the back. In front of 501 San Mateo Avenue, we have the Starbucks and 1 space, green zone. And then next to Grand Leader, there's a 2-space yellow zone near the end of the block on Angus Avenue. The outreach that staff had done, this was in 2020, actually just prior to the pandemic. Staff went door to door to all the businesses, really made an attempt to contact all the businesses in person. And then when if that did not work, then we tried calling them by phone. And if that also didn't work, we left a door hanger. And so extensive outreach was performed in downtown regarding these. I also would like to note that there was an evaluation taken prior to TSPC. We evaluated the locations based on the special parking restriction policy, safety and legal considerations, as well as our municipal code. So the loading zone benefits include reducing instances of double parking, resulting in blocked traffic, encouraging faster turnover, and most businesses were supportive, except a few had concerns about removal of general parking spaces. So staff recommendation includes approving 40 feet of yellow curb in front of 500, 508 San Mateo Avenue from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. Approving 40 feet of yellow curb on the north side of Angus Avenue at 600 San Mateo Avenue from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. And approving 20 feet of green curb in front of 501 San Mateo Avenue, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ewan, for the report. Questions from colleagues?
Mr. Mayor?
Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, do we have some public comment?
Not at this time, but you can start and we'll see if anybody comes in.
Yeah, it was my understanding that two of the business owners were going to be speaking this evening, and I know one of them had trouble getting into the meeting.
Okay.
But
I was going to say if they're interested, they can raise their hand, but you have the floor for now.
Sure, I'm willing to hold my comments until if they had an opportunity.
Well, Mr. Vice Mayor, it must be the season. You ask and you have received. There are two hands from the public that have raised up, and so why don't we go ahead in case they want to give their comments and then take care of business or what they may have. Anybody else who wants to speak on the topic from the community, please go ahead and raise your hand now. I see that there are two speakers.
Yes, we have Mike Carsa. Just one moment, I'm bringing you into the room.
Right, so we have two speakers, and after the two speakers, we're going to close that off and bring it back to council.
Hi, Mike, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. As I understand it from tonight, that on Angus Avenue, we're slated to get a yellow loading unloading zone, which is not what we requested or need. We really need a green zone, a 24-minute green zone for customer turnover, for people to come in, grab their sandwich, cross a shop close pretty much across the street, and move on. There's parking behind my building for trucks to load and unload, and we don't really have a problem with trucks double parking to load and unload. What we really need down there is a green zone. So I would like for you to reconsider removing the yellow zone and putting a green zone instead of the yellow zone. I would appreciate your consideration for that.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. You guys have a great evening. Appreciate your time.
You as well.
Thank you. And next we have Max Wayne. Max, one moment. I'm trying to bring you in the room. Max, you're currently muted. I am trying to unmute you. Hi, Max. Can you hear us?
Okay, I'm here right now. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. And believe me or not, me and Mike did not coordinate, but we have a similar concern. Concern is that yellow pickup zones are normally for the commercial vehicle, and people are reluctant to park on this because they're afraid they're gonna get the ticket. But if we have a green zone or a green area where people can come and pick it up, same thing goes with, because my area where I am, Atlas and Nuri, 632 and 637, a lot of people, they come from Uber or DoorDash and they pick up and go. So the yellow zone, they will not be able to park. That's same concern what I have, which Mike has. So that would be my suggestion, to have convert them into green zone. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here. And I see that is the second and last speaker. So we're going to bring it back to the City Council. And if you don't mind, Vice Mayor, I'll start with you. You're on mute.
Unmute. There it is.
No worries.
Excellent. Yes. These three locations. So I agree with the location by Grand Leader. He does have a loading zone, and I think at the TSPC there might have just been a little confusion between the intent of the green zone and the yellow zone, because they're able to manage to load up his store, as he said. The intent there is to provide an area that people can come in quickly, get what they want, and leave. So that takes care of that one location. What I'm going to say next is my observations of being downtown quite a bit, and the yellow zone at 500 and 508 San Mateo Avenue, I'm going to say it's not really needed because there is plenty of parking and loading in the back. What prompted a lot of this, I believe, is how we have a number of businesses that are karate or judo lessons and the swim school, where we have drop-offs and parents are wanting to drop their kids off, of course, as close to the business as possible. So they double park, and putting additional loading and unloading zones in front of those businesses, I think, would be very helpful. So I'm not convinced yet to support the loading zone at Honlin. I would propose that at Starbucks, instead of having one 20-foot parking space for people to pick up their coffee or go into other businesses, that you would extend that to 2 spaces. And I think this is a good step as we're seeing this food delivery business take off. There's I was in Society, and they have their counter has 5 spots for 5 different vendors of delivery. So that need for people that want to get their food picked up by these businesses and delivered, or even people who just want to pick up. As we're coming out of COVID, I think there's still going to be people that are going to be a little bit reluctant to want to go into a restaurant. So having more green zones, and if potentially changing the green zone in our municipal code from 24 minutes to 12, that doesn't have to happen tonight, but I think we should look into that to be able to get that turnover of customers in our downtown, because parking is quite difficult to obtain. So those are my comments for the time being. Thank you.
Councilmember Mason.
Yeah, thank you. So I had a couple of questions. The first one is actually a comment. Just really excited to see in the report that this is part of the streetscape plan, and finally little parts of it are coming to fruition. So very exciting. I did want to ask if there's any reason that one cannot unload on a green zone. So as long as they're within their 24 minutes as opposed to the 30-minute yellow zone, is there any reason one can't unload in the green zone?
I'm not sure legally if that's not, but I think there may be a conflict of intent. So if you have vehicles that are parking and who are really passengers looking to park and quickly run into a shop and come back out, and then having loading activities at that same location, that may not be the best of activities to happen at the same spot. I did speak with our traffic engineer and our consultant traffic engineer, and it sounded like, at least in agencies he's been in, loading did not happen, or material loading, I should say, did not happen. I'm not sure if there is a legal argument that can't happen, though.
Okay. I can't tell if the city manager wants to say something or not. No, okay. Okay, yeah, because I would just say if there's not, then why not go with the green loading zone? I mean, the green zone that could be used for loading. My other question is whether so when we've talked about COVID and the city streamlining a number of processes for business, one of them was around the ability for businesses to have parklets. And so will these spaces given up impact businesses that could get parklets at a later time?
So if we have the loading zone areas, I suppose the benefit of having those loading zones in those spots would be diminished because they would be taken by a parklet. That's not to preclude parklets from occurring on San Mateo Avenue. It may just reduce the benefit of the loading zones at these particular locations where they would be installed, however.
Okay.
So, why don't I chime in on that. So if we
City Manager, could you hold on, please? Councilmember Mason, I'd like you to conclude with your other questions, please.
Yeah, so so that one can be answered, and then along with that, because it's tied, they are kind of tied together. Going back to the number of arguments that were given when the street closures happened, there were, I think it was, I don't remember if it was council members or staff, but that were concerned about the, the jewelry repair shop, that people wanted to park right in front because it was safer for them. I think we had other businesses who stated that they wanted to make sure they were visual. So I'm just thinking of those same arguments when you have a loading zone where you're inviting big trucks to go in front of a business and maybe they're not as visible, or you're taking a location that could be closer to that jewelry shop. And I'm just thinking aesthetically, I know you're looking at this practically, but aesthetically, as we move towards meeting our streetscape plan, I do get concerned that we're taking spaces that could later be parklets. I get concerned that it might be somewhat unsightly on our main street. And I'm not quite sure why we're not doing more loading zones on the sides and on the parking lots that we own that go directly into the back shop of some of these locations. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone in City Manager?
Sure. Councilmember Mason, let me address your prior question and expound upon our city engineer's comments. So this will not preclude a business from requesting a parklet. These zones are intended to be complementary and help the businesses. And so if a business that has a loading zone in front of them desires to put a parklet there, staff will analyze that. We will not just say, no, there's a loading zone, you can't have a parklet. So we'll analyze it. And the recommendation may be to eliminate the loading zone and allow the business to install a parklet or relocate the loading zone. If that happens, because the city council authorized it, we will come back to the city council for relocation or elimination of that loading zone. With regard to your other questions, largely, why are loading zones not placed on the side streets as a sort of immediate preference, as well as why is there not dedicated space in our rear parking lots for loading? I'll turn that over to the city engineer, but first I'll say a couple things. Where there is the sort of easy ability to have a loading zone, be it a yellow or a green passenger zone on a side street, we did recommend that. And so, for example, Grand Leader, that is on Angus. There's the desire now to move it from a yellow to a green zone. Staff does not, we don't recommend against that. We totally understand the business's position in that converting from a yellow to a green. Absolutely. The other businesses, though, there's not a clear location for there to be a loading zone on the side street. And so that's why it is on San Mateo Ave. And what we did hear from the businesses is that they do want that easy access for their customers that mainly access their business through San Mateo Ave to likely be able to pull up, have a loading zone right in front of the business and be able to go in. There are no locations proposed. Actually, I guess there's only one, the Hanlin location, where there is a rear parking lot where that loading or passenger loading can occur. And so that is the only location that I think fits your question. And so I'll turn it over to the city engineer to expound upon why that Hanlin spot was recommended.
Yes, so the original locations were meant to be spread wide apart, and so they were in the 400, 500, and the 600 block. And the plan had noted that there was blocking of the travel lane from vehicles that were double parking, and some of the activities were the unloading of materials. I spoke with the business owner of the beauty salon today, and she anecdotally said, oh yeah, there's the grocery store next to me and they load, and she's seen that activity. And so she was not opposed to it whatsoever for my conversation, and she confirmed that she was not opposed to it when she spoke with staff last year. And so there seems to be there's some need with the grocery store being at that location, and it was mid-block. It was in the middle of downtown, evenly spaced between the other yellow loading zones, and vehicles will tend to drive down San Mateo Avenue, and may take convenience and double park if they don't see a loading zone. And really, it's meant to allow for the free travel on San Mateo Avenue. They may not make the effort to go around the block and utilize the side a loading zone on the side street.
Thank you. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you. So my comments are mostly about the Hanlin location. I'm also supportive of having the Angus zone be green and not yellow. For the Hanlin location, and I had sent this question in advance and received an answer just prior to the meeting about going around the corner onto Sylvan and putting the loading zone there adjacent to the laundromat. You can't go directly next to Hanlin on the side, similarly to what we're doing at Grand Leader, because the travel lane is there, and there's no parking on that side of the street. But the adjacent to the laundromat, directly across the street, the laundromat has a parking lot behind it. Hanlin has a parking lot behind it. It's troubling to hear that deliveries to the grocery store are blocking San Mateo Avenue currently, when not only is there a lot behind the grocery store, there's an entrance from the back of the grocery store. And so why they wouldn't take their deliveries through the back makes no sense. And I don't think we should approach the store owner to tell them that that's what should happen with their deliveries to their business. Or if there's other, for whatever reasons, then they could utilize a loading zone, which would be two doors down, and across one very narrow street of Sylvan, adjacent to the laundromat. It just seems to make more sense to me, because parking is at such a premium in our downtown, and my understanding of the intent of putting in zones was to increase turnover and make sure that we don't have cars that are parked and just taking up space all day. Also will be addressed with meters at some point. But getting that turnover was the goal. And I'm concerned with having two loading zone spaces in front of Hanlin, that those spaces are going to be empty most of the day. And not be available for the customers to those businesses.
Any other questions or comments from colleagues? Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. The comments I'm hearing, they definitely make sense, and I know that the limited parking is definitely a concern. But I think it sounds to me like the bigger issue is the safety aspect of having trucks double parked on San Mateo Avenue, and that is the busiest street, and that's where trucks do tend to stop. Regardless of whether there's better places for them, they do tend to do that. And plenty of times I've been stuck behind trucks trying to get down there, and so I'm definitely in favor of adding a few loading zones. I'm hoping that's going to help alleviate some of that and increase the safety. It sounds like staff is in favor of changing the color of the Grand Leader one. It seems like there is a little bit of overlap in the colors, green, yellow, white. There's some overlap in what's allowed, and how much time is allowed in each one. So hopefully the average person won't be turned off by a color and think that they're not going to be able to park because there's a color there. I know our ability to enforce is also limited. Whether something's a 12-minute or 24-minute, I don't think anyone's going to be standing there counting minutes and issuing tickets, and so there is some flexibility in it. it becomes more of a visual reminder for people to know that, don't just park there and then stay the whole afternoon. Just, take care of your business and move on, and hopefully it will have that effect. And I know that we're also looking longer term at potentially bringing in some parking meters, which will also help with the turnover. So I know that's a project for the future. But I think this is a good step. Definitely in favor of moving forward with some of this striping.
Yeah, for myself, it is a premium, and I think the green makes more sense on Angus than the yellow personally. And I think we heard from somebody that already had said why that makes sense, and I think again that's where the need is, and that's where you want some turnover. But I think what would be helpful for people to hear too is how did it come up with these locations? I know I'm probably going to be said, well, they're kind of centered, but there's another market maybe on the block that goes more south or what have you, that they'd say, well, why isn't it there? Because those trucks always double park at that market. They don't use the back lot either, which goes to Councilman Member Hamilton's comment of, maybe some businesses say you have these options, which most of the businesses don't. And so it's, as you know, it depends what time of the day, but there's a lot of frustration, I think, that folks have trying to go around a double parked truck. If they have the lot in the back, that should be the nice, respectful thing to do. But then why did we determine these locations rather than also where another market is that has these same issues?
Yes, and so the original locations, I believe, were spread somewhat trying to be equidistant throughout downtown, and there was consideration to how a truck might access the spot. So I know the item isn't before you tonight, but for instance, the Teamsters, it would be right next, well, would have been right next to a driveway. And so it would have allowed for easier access of the truck rather than having to try to pull into a tighter location. So the corners, there was some evaluation with the geometry and trying to make the utilization of the loading spaces a little bit easier. And I think the guidance was from the streetscape plan, which recommended two yellow curb spaces spread widely throughout the downtown, and I believe that's where it had come from. And also, in speaking with the business owners and not hearing too many objections with where it was being proposed.
I think it was good for folks to hear that, because I'm sure if you ask various folks, they'll say, well, I think you need one here or you need one there. Let's go to Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I wanted to follow up with the comment that you made down by Genevan at 480 San Mateo Avenue. There is a market, Hawaiian barbecue, and there is no loading in the back. And that's where I frequently see a double parked truck. I appreciate the attempt to the idea that the zone should be spread out, but it doesn't fit our downtown as well, because our downtown's unique, where there are storefronts that have no back loading area, and it's a grocery store. So where are they going to park? So I and without really knowing our downtown, someone could just miss that, and I think at that location it was missed, and but that's not what's on this agenda right now. I think this is a good effort to move forward, to get things done in response to the concerns. At some point, maybe later on, we tweak it some more. And I did submit some questions, and I did get a response that individual business owners could request cones and an encroachment permit to kind of deal with that. I will go back to the Han Lin location. I've never seen a Mexicana market deliver to San Mateo Avenue because I just never seen it, and I'm there quite often. They have a huge parking lot in the back, so I think that would be a mistake, and I hope my colleagues also agree with that. More green is needed. Loading isn't needed there.
Councilmember Mason.
Yeah, I would just recommend outreach to the business owners on where the loading and unloading options are, a letter or something along those lines, like a notification. And then also just our ticketing. I mean, if the double parking, which has been mentioned a couple of times today, I mean, if you're going to do a loading and unloading zone for 30 minutes, then that's a hefty amount of time to be able to ticket somebody. So I really encourage our city team to be ticketing those double parkers that are loading, unloading, and disrupting traffic in our downtown.
Yeah, and again, the rationale for my question, it was also I wanted folks to hear, because I'm getting those questions. Why here, not there? So, and I will say that I have seen on San Mateo Avenue folks walking the street, actually chalking and citing vehicles if needed, but I have seen that now twice. So just as an FYI. Okay, is there any other comments? This is a action item. It is a resolution. There has been some discussions about obviously some changes. I'm kind of hearing, I think, from everyone on the concurrence of the yellow to the green on Angus. I've not heard one person say no. But I do want to go to the city manager, and he maybe want to wrap it all up for us so we're all on the same page.
Sure. Council members, is concurrent with the staff recommendation, with the exception of converting the proposed yellow zone at along Angus near 500 San Mateo Avenue to a green zone, and conversation around potentially eliminating the proposed yellow zone in front of 500 and 508 San Mateo Avenue, closest to the Honlin restaurant. I have not heard a decision or a majority of council in favor of either keeping it or taking that recommendation out. So I would ask for clarity on that point.
Perfect. On that clarification, I think I know where the vice mayor is on that from my other colleagues.
Talking about 500 and 508?
Yes.
I don't think we should move ahead with the yellow zone there. I think we should study either moving it around the corner onto Sylvan or moving it somewhere else.
Councilmember Salazar, so your mic's on.
I'm going to say I want to stay with staff's recommendation, and I do think we need those loading zones somewhere, and there might be a better place for them, but absent knowing where those might be, I believe we should still move forward with creating some zones. So I'm in favor of keeping that one.
Councilmember Mason.
I wonder if we can meet in the middle, get to yes with making it green. I do agree. I don't see a lot of traffic there. I'm down there all the time. I don't see a lot of loading and unloading in front of Honlin. So I think I'd be okay with a green zone if the other council members are amenable to it.
I would support a green zone there over yellow.
Vice Mayor, I have my opinion, but I would say not at this time. But that's me. But Vice Mayor,
I'm definitely in favor of green instead of yellow. But for that location, we're only talking about the Honlin location at this moment.
You're correct.
So I would say green. It's across the street from Starbucks. I think there'll be plenty of people that'll pop in and pop out. So, and as Councilmember Mason mentioned, somebody could Well, I don't see anybody ever unloading there, so I just don't see it really ever being needed. So I'll be quiet now. I'll move forward.
Okay, well, I'm hearing consensus of a majority to no yellow, but then consideration of green, and I'm hearing consensus of a green, or a majority of a green. If everyone's in concurrence, city manager, does that help clear that up? Okay.
All right.
Can I ask another clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. So in addition to the coloring of the curb, is there going to be any stenciling or signage that identifies what those zones are intended for?
But that would be determined during the work order. I apologize right now, I'm blanking whether we typically put up signs for loading zones. I believe we are putting one up for Patipa Lane. Signs should be in coordination or in addition to the curb marking. We have our traffic engineer on the line. I wonder if we can bring him in and help you answer that question.
Let's bring it in, because I'd have the council member Salazar's too. I mean, we've got to notify with the minutes and be clear somehow.
Well, and also my other concern is that, you know, if it's just painting the curb, it's a relatively small expense, but if we start putting up signs, the expense starts going up. And so if we're going to make changes from the dais based on something that's already been studied, I would prefer that we not make those changes and rather go back, study it, make sure that we're going to actually have the same benefit or an equal benefit before we commit to a bigger, more permanent expense.
And conference room has, so city manager?
So if the city engineer or the traffic engineer is not coming in, I can confirm that typically for a green zone, there's not a sign that's put up, but there's stenciling along the green zone, typically in white, that denotes the time limit. And there are typically not signs for yellow zones, given that it's commonly understood what a yellow zone means. There are more often signs for white zones, and we are putting a white zone at La Petite Baleine, so that may explain that.
And our consultant traffic engineer, Saeed Fakri, is in the room.
Good evening. I think I still don't have the video, but I just say that generally, although in the vehicle code, California vehicle code and city codes, it's an explanation of the color of the curb. But for general public, it's always a good practice, and all cities do that. And they add additional signs. And you mentioned also some variation of green curve. If you want to change it from 24-minute, then you have to amend the code to allow that. But also you can clarify it with signs. So it's a good practice to add signs too.
So what I've heard is it's not required to have the signs, because I think the council member was, you know, if it doesn't work, and then the cost of taking out the sign and what have you. The Muni code is what allows us to set parameters, but we have the code now, so it is what it is. We can't just change it tonight. So does that answer your question, Councilmember Salazar?
Sort of. It sounds like we should put up signs, but for this decision, we're not planning on putting up signs, and so we have some flexibility then to change. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, and typically the decision to put up signs is housed with staff, and so what I can say is we don't have to decide that tonight and make that a part of this. You can simply decide on the zones, and staff will develop an appropriate notification, be that stenciling of the pavement color or placing of signs, and then we may adjust over time if need be.
Okay. And so then I would want to hear from staff that changing those colors is not going to significantly minimize the impact of what we're trying to do. And if we can still accomplish what we set out to do with green versus yellow, then I'm in favor of changing the colors.
Thank you. I think if we take an incremental approach, that is something that we can try. And there is also ability to add additional loading zones as businesses identify. We would like to take that to do the noticing and take that to the TSPC before we did that. But there are additional opportunities on the 600 block and on the 400 block as well. And specifically in front of Honlin, if we have the pole in place, if it is determined that the green zone doesn't work, we could take that before council again to amend that.
Okay.
Right, and I've heard good feedback as well as to other locations that we should consider in our next round. Thank you.
Council Member Hamilton.
Just quickly going back to the question about signage for loading zones. I've seen, I don't know if I've seen it in San Bruno or not. I don't know exactly where I've seen it, but I've seen yellow curbs that have red stenciling on them saying loading zone and what the time is, similar to what we do with white stenciling on green curbs. So that's always an option as well.
Okay, is everyone and city manager, are we still good on where we're going with this, with the resolution making some modifications?
Yeah, so just to be clear, it is changing the, going with staff's recommendation with the exception of changing the yellow curb recommendation along Angus closest to 600 San Mateo Ave from yellow to green. And it is also changing the recommendation for a 40-foot yellow zone in front of 500 and 508 San Mateo Avenue to green. And there was also conversation around looking at potentially adding loading zones and a loading zone in front of the other grocery store in the 400 block, I believe. So staff will look at that subsequently.
Okay, does everybody understand the modifications of the resolution? All right, this is an action item. Asking for a motion in a second. I'm sorry. Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, I'm taking my hand down. I just did. Any consideration of why would there only be one space next to Starbucks, which has a higher amount of people wanting to go in and out quickly compared to the Honlin store or the hair salon?
I believe initially the loading zones were yellow to accommodate trucks, and this passenger zone, the green zone would be more than likely a passenger vehicle, which could utilize a single space more easily. And so I think that was the thought behind the two spaces for the yellow loading zones and then one for the green zone.
Right, and I understand that. I'm thinking just one space in front of Starbucks is when you could have two. There's actually three spaces there, so providing a couple spaces that get people to go in and out, pop in, and not double park. I think that would be more beneficial than even doing anything on the Honlin side. Just for if we're really talking about doing something from the dais. Just for my colleagues to consider that.
Through the mayor, I'm less concerned about that if we're going to be approving two green zone spaces directly across the street. I don't think we necessarily need two in front of Starbucks and two more greens directly across the street in front of Honlin. I think the three combined spaces that are very, very close to Starbucks would be is going to take care of it.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
My question is, doesn't it make more sense? I mean, there's really no reason in my mind that why we would have green over at Honlin when it's more of a need at Starbucks. If you're going to have two spaces, I would put it at Starbucks and do nothing at the Honlin side.
Well, but also cars come in different directions too.
That's a great point, Mr. Mayor. I stand corrected.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there any other discussion? If not, I think the city manager has articulated it to us a couple times. I think we're all understanding the resolution. Is there any action from council?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as amended with changing the yellows to greens.
I will second.
Motion Salazar, second Hamilton. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Mason,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Aye. Thank you all. Thank you, staff. We'll move on to item number 7. It's a study session. Receive report on the trash receptacles and newspaper rack enclosures on San Mateo Avenue and provide direction to staff. City manager.
Good afternoon, Council. This presentation will be provided by Jimmy Tan, our Public Works Director, but I just want to provide a brief introductory comment. So throughout the presentation, you will see the cost of various trash receptacles as well as the cost of the newspaper racks. As hard as it is, what I want to say is don't center on the cost. There's sometimes a several $100 difference, if not $1,000 difference between some of the various receptacles. However, we do know that there are grant funds that can fund the recycling portion, and we're looking for grants to fund the other portion. Also, the current trash cans have been there for over 30 years. And so a few $100 difference between one trash can or the other, I don't want you to sort of center on the price and have that be the highest factor that you weigh. It's really the aesthetics of our downtown, the usability, and maintenance of that trash can. And there are a number of various versions, I think a total of 9 that we will talk about. And with that intro, I'll turn it over to our Public Works Director, Jimmy Tan.
Great. Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Public Works Director Jimmy Tan. Have a brief presentation on this item tonight. The objective of the presentation is to provide the City Council information on the proposed trash receptacles and newspaper racks enclosure, and to obtain feedback and direction from Council tonight. The agenda for tonight's presentation is as follows. I'll provide a brief background on the adopted San Mateo Avenue's conceptual streetscape plan, then discuss the criteria used to select the trash receptacles and show some available options, then share some examples of newspaper racks enclosures, and lastly, staff's recommendations and next steps, then questions. As for the background, the City Council adopted the San Mateo Avenue's conceptual streetscape plan on October 22nd, 2019, which determined the vision for the city's downtown corridor. The plan evaluated the San Mateo Avenue corridor from El Camino to Huntington Avenue near Artichoke Joe's and was developed through a community engagement process. The plan included design guidelines to create an inviting downtown atmosphere for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. It also included recommendations to beautify and enhance San Mateo Avenue. As a conceptual plan, this document is to be used as a guide for the next steps of the design process while leaving flexibility for future implementation. Of course, the ultimate design will depend on the project budget once funding is identified. The plan assessed the existing conditions, then provided recommendations for improvement. Some of the proposed improvements includes new sidewalk paving, public art spaces, improved planting, storm water management features, lighting, wayfinding signage, and gateways. And one of the recommended improvements included the replacement of the trash receptacles, and then possibly, and then also including the installation of the guards around the newspaper racks. So currently, the existing trash receptacle looks like the one, the picture that you see on the bottom right-hand corner. It's old, as the city manager mentioned. It's made out of concrete, and it's in dire need of replacement. So the information on this slide was taken directly from the streetscape plan. And although the plan recommended to replace the trash receptacles, it didn't really go into detail in terms of the criteria to select the receptacles. As you see on the pictures on the right, showed just 2 pictures of the one trash and then one recycling receptacle. The receptacles are proposed to be stainless steel, but no other information was provided in the document. So prior to the selection of the receptacles, staff determined the criteria, as noted on the slide, and staff discussed with Recology to determine the capacity, and they mentioned that the minimum capacity shall be 32 gallons. And staff also was interested in having a receptacle with a lid and cover to prevent any rainwater going to the can. Maintenance is also of concern for both Recology and the city. For Recology, doors with the lids must be easily accessible for their staff to retrieve the waste. For city staff, we're interested in having a receptacle that's easily maintainable. Having a stainless steel receptacle that's proposed in a streetscape plan would create maintenance issues if it's stained. So staff is interested in receptacles that can be easily maintained. In addition, staff look for receptacles with material that is fire, rust, and stain resistant, and the design that prevents graffiti from being etched onto these receptacles. So here are just several options that staff found that met the criteria. Staff share the options with Recology. They don't have any preference on the design and are more focused on the ease of access to retrieve the waste. So the common theme that is that we're not proposing any stainless steel receptacles. As you can see here, all of the receptacles have lids on top, except for number 2, which does come with the lid, but it's not shown. Also, the design will prevent graffiti. So receptacles 1 through 5 are similar with slats design. Numbers 1 and 2 are very common, in other downtown areas. Go to Burlingame or St. Carlos, and you see very similar receptacles as number 1 and 2 variations there. And there's also used in a lot of the parks settings as well. Receptacles 6 through 9 are a bit different with no slats. Number 7 is currently being used at Earl Glenview Park. Number 8 is a variation of number 7 with a wood exterior instead of all steel. Number 9 it's a big belly receptacle. It's solar powered to let staff know when the trash is ready for disposal, and also has a trash compactor component. And the unit's advantage is that it can reduce the number of collection, thus reducing the cost. So these are just some of the more detailed information for the trash receptacles here. This is a streetscape classic, and then very highly commonly used in several downtown areas, as I mentioned before. This is the other receptacles here, the Dumore, which is another commonly used in park settings as well as downtown areas. This is the diamond receptacle, the Arctic, and then the terrace, the embossed, and then the Dumore, which is what we're currently using at the Earl Glenview Park. This one comes in a variety of different colors as shown on the slide here as well, and then also the variations that I mentioned from this is the seal versus the seal and wood combination as well. And this, again, the big belly is the most expensive unit. It's about $4,000 per unit to purchase. And it's a lot of agencies have this. Millbury actually have big bellies in their downtown corridor as well. So as for the newspaper racks, they're also in dire need of replacement and possibly some sort of enclosure surrounding for aesthetics. The city doesn't own the newspaper racks. The city has a total of 5 locations in the downtown area where the racks currently exist, and the list of locations are located on the slide there. And some of these locations may not need enclosure, as the newspaper racks up or against the wall of some businesses. The picture that you see on the slide here is of the racks, adjacent to or right in front of the Starbucks. So putting an enclosure may not be necessary in those locations. But staff will evaluate each location detail as well as any ADA issues related to the installation of any enclosures. And staff will also coordinate with the newspaper companies prior to the replacement of these newspaper racks. So the cost to replace the racks enclosure at each location is approximately $6,000. The picture on the right that you see there is from Millbrae in their downtown corridor, where the newspaper racks are partially closed. City of Burlingame actually has something similar to this in their downtown areas as well. Staff reached out to the vendor that created the design and manufactured enclosure for Millbrae, and some of these patterns are from the manufacturer, the architect that is shown on the slide as well. And multiple patterns can be made, and sample patterns are shown here. But if the city is interested in having our own design, additional costs, there are some additional costs with the non-standard patterns, but it can vary depending on the complexity of the design as well. So for tonight, staff is recommended to replace both the trash receptacles and newspaper racks, along with the installation of an enclosure, and seeking council's input on the design options. The total costs, or the budget, is about $86,000, and the estimated cost for the receptacles is about $56,000, and the newspaper racks with enclosure is about $30,000. As for the next steps, we'd like to identify the model of the trash receptacles and allocate a budget to replace them. And that's pretty much it. So this concludes my presentation, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Tan, for those comments. And let's turn it back to the, if you take the shared screen down, please. Sure. Thank you kindly. City Manager, do you have any other final comments before I go to council? You're on mute.
Sure. We neglected to mention that tonight's action is just a study session for the City Council to provide design direction on the type of trash receptacle, as well as the appropriate approach for newsstands. We will come back to the City Council with a funding plan and an implementation plan with timing once we get direction. In addition, on that slide where you saw the 9 options, it's worth pointing out that while staff is not providing a recommendation, we do want to highlight that options 1 through 5 all have slaps, and there is a test or a pilot of option 1 in front of Starbucks. It is a trash receptacle and a recycling receptacle. It is currently, as of today, suffering from some dilapidation, and that the tops are broken off, as well as trash becomes trapped in between the slats when the interior 32-gallon can is taken out to be disposed of. And so it does create, one, an unsightly issue and a constant maintenance issue. And so council should think of that aesthetic-wise when you're looking at options 1 through 5, because all of those have varying versions of a see-through feature where trash can be trapped.
Thank you. I was kind of looking how to raise my hand. I was having a hard time. Before I open it to my colleagues, just so you mentioned the Starbucks. To give some history, there was the time that it was like, let's get 2 trash cans, 1 for recycling, 1 for regular trash, and then see how they operate, how the durability is a similar we wanted to go. The concern, and then I'll open it to my colleagues, is it seems from then till now that it is not, recyclables don't just go in the recyclable. Hence, it is then contaminated and it becomes trash. And so that's not of a value if we're spending so much money on something that we're not going to be able to use the value of what it's supposed to be for, and it ends up being contaminated. So are we looking at just trash receptacles? Or are we talking recyclable? Are we talking both? Or what's the thought on that?
Sure. Can I ask Director Tan to put up the slide of the version that is at Earl Glenview Park? Because we purposely put another option for the recycling container that has a circle cut out for bottles or other recycling bottles, just to further denote that the difference. And you can actually see it better on number 8 because it has a more aerial view of the wood version. So next slide. So if the council wanted to go with a different model, this is common to help with the commingling of recycling and trash.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get kind of so we're all on the same page on what we're going down the path on. And then first is Vice Mayor Medina, then Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes, thank you. This has been a long time coming. I recall the mayor and I on a subcommittee meeting and going through a bunch of these models, and we got to a certain point and nothing else happened after we got those receptacles there at Starbucks. So thank you for moving forward with this. I did go look at the Glenview can, and it's nice looking. Do we have any other cities using that model? Because it seems to be holding up fairly well at a park where not too many people are kind of hammering it and where so that's my first question. Do we have any references on how they're performing with that can on a downtown or city street? The mayor had a question that I was asking. So are we proposing to put 2 cans at each location now where there's currently 1? As for the newspaper racks, I did send a question in about, are they necessary to have them? And I'd like to share that with the public when staff responds. But my suggestion there would be, have we checked, or the question there is, have we checked with the newspaper publishers to see if they really are interested? Because a number of those those racks have nothing in them and are being used by a few people or one person to store personal articles during the day. So if we could maybe not have as many. Today, I get my daily journal from one of the businesses there at Grand Leader. It has it there. So having staff check with the newspaper publishers to make sure that they really even want them anymore, and then who has to pay for it. One of the questions I asked, I think it's important for our community to know, because I know I get this question quite a bit, is who maintains the garbage cans? Who services the garbage cans? How much does it cost? How frequently are they picked up? And why are they overflowing on the weekends? Those are my questions.
City staff?
Great. Would you like me to take that on, City Manager?
Go ahead, Director Tan.
Would you like me to stop sharing so I can see? Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So a couple of questions that were raised here. See, the first one, whether or not the cans at the Glenview are being used in downtown areas. I've been to several downtowns here within the peninsula, and most of the ones that I've seen are the first, options 1 and 2. They're very common, in St. Carlos, San Mateo, and Burlingame actually. The ones in Millbrae, as I mentioned, they're using Big Belly, but other parts of areas, like in front of the Walgreens in Millbrae, they're using, very similar to, the receptacle that's shown on item number 1. It seems like that's more common in the other downtowns that I've seen, that I've been to, but who knows? We can check with the manufacturers to see whether they sold it to other, other city agencies and that they're using, within their downtown or not. The second question is related to the newspaper racks. Yeah, definitely. I think, I was out there this morning, opening looking through every single one of them to see whether it was filled or not. And you're correct. Not a lot of the bins are filled. And there are multiple locations that are just, especially like, Hongling has some on 2 bins on their side across the street, and Starbucks, there's like 8 bins there, right? And then you have the, in front of Big Joe's, multiple bins there, and then the West Coast Cafe actually has multiple bins there as well. So, we'll definitely coordinate with the newspaper companies, especially if we're going to be, replacing all of these. You want to make sure that we'll put it in the right spot, and not have too many bins, along the entire downtown corridor here. In regards to the last question about who services the garbage, the Ecology is the one that services the garbage, and they do that on a daily basis. They do it 5 days, and it's part of their franchise agreement that they maintain that for the city. I think those are the 3 questions. Did I miss anything? I'm sorry.
One question for are we intending to put 2 cans at each can location?
That's correct.
Is that
yes.
direction? You're asking for us to provide that direction, or do you have a recommendation on that?
The recommendation is to put 2 cans because, we want to have some sort of recycling component at each location because, otherwise, you have a mixed contamination between recycle and garbage. So the thought is to have 2 cans at every location.
Okay. And one clarifying question. So Recology is doing it 5 days a week, but if there was a way to get them to skip a weekday and do it during the weekend, because it from Saturday to Sunday the bins fill up pretty heavily. I was there this last weekend and various weekends. There are people who are, I guess it's better that they're using the cans instead of throwing it on the street. But having some service looked into on the weekend, which probably is more expensive, which is probably why it's not happening, I'm guessing. So I'll leave it at that.
City Manager, you had your hand up. Maybe you had some comment on that.
Yeah, I think there was another question from Councilmember Medina, and that was who owns the newspaper racks?
Oh, that's right.
And so, Director Tan, will you take that?
Sure, the newspaper racks are owned by the newspaper, agencies, and there's, according to our city's municipal code, they are the ones that are supposed to provide the maintenance of these newspaper racks.
And cities that want a different aesthetic look typically pay and replace them. And so that's exactly what happened in Burlingame in the example we showed. So if you want newer newspaper racks, typically it's the municipal agency that funds it, and then you have to provide them back to the newspaper companies.
Okay, and by the way, those screens look fine. I'm okay with they're all pretty nice looking. So if we could perhaps reduce the number of racks and checking with them, and then putting the screens up, I would be interested in improving the appearance for those that need it with the screens.
Councilmember Hamilton.
So our vice mayor was very methodical in going through most of my questions and asking them. So my list is not nearly as long as it was a minute ago. One general comment I want to make is to thank staff for bringing this to us. I have been advocating for a long time that we use the streetscape plan as a menu and start moving forward with small changes to downtown, knowing that we don't have $20 million lying around to implement the entire program, but there are small changes that we can make to show our merchants and to show our residents that we are committed to improving downtown. And this is a step in that direction, and I really, really appreciate it. Going to the specifics, one thing I would like us to consider as far as giving staff direction and things to look at, since this is a study session, is perhaps not saying that we have to have the exact same design at every spot along the avenue. Specifically, when you look at the Big Belly, advocating for having how many total was it? There's 40 something. Having 40 something big bellies up and down the avenue does not sound very fiscally responsible. However, I think it wouldn't be a too difficult of a study asking Recology, who's picking this up, if there are particular locations that tend to overflow really rapidly, and perhaps just get a small handful of big bellies just for those locations, since they can handle so much more capacity and with compaction and all of that. It wouldn't be aesthetically revolting to have have a couple of big bellies here and there, and then a whatever design we agree on everywhere else. That's something to consider. I did appreciate, I had sent the question in advance, similar question to what our Vice Mayor asked about the numbers of newspaper racks, and the response was that in some locations there's more newspapers are putting their publications there, and in some it's less. So if we can coordinate with them to try to reduce the number of empty ones, as the Vice Mayor said, I would be in favor of that. Regarding the enclosures, I like all the designs there too. Not knowing what the additional cost would be for a custom pattern, it would be kind of cool to have something San Bruno-y, something incorporating a large heart or something like that in the design. Might be aesthetically pleasing for downtown, but it would depend on the cost. But any of the designs that we see there, I especially like the one that looked like trees, but it looks like Milbury's doing that one, so maybe we don't want to copy, but who knows. Then lastly, I do like the idea of so I guess this is the first actual question. If we're going to do two cans, will the recycling can always have the small lid on, no matter which of the options that we choose? It would have the small opening for the recycling.
That's an option that the city council can decide. We can go with that format. The benefit of going with that format is that there's some uniformity, and there's a visual denotation that this one is for recycling in addition to the words that would be placed there. But it's an option.
Yeah, and I would recommend as well. So I would recommend that, because that's that is typical for a recycling bin, that it's it's a small opening to discourage people from shoving large things in there that don't belong in there. And I would also recommend that with any design we choose, that if the entire fixture can't be the recycling blue, that at least there be some component on there that's the recycling blue as a visual cue. For people to put their things in the right place. Excuse me. My last comment is, it might be out of scope, but it's certainly related, and I don't know exactly what we can do about it, but it is a concern. I have observed on many occasions business owners walking their garbage out to these cans. And not utilizing their own trash pickups, and I don't know what can be done about that. But I figured, since we're talking about trash cans, that I would bring it up. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from my colleagues, and if anybody from the public wishes to speak, if you could raise your hand, and we'll go to right now Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you, sir. So I had my question is about the garbage cans that were placed at what used to be Posey Park, and the ones that we have in front of the rec center. Were those deemed to be cost prohibitive, or it seems like the material is pretty sturdy, probably more sturdy than steel, withstand the weather a lot better. On a few clean sweep events, and I was assigned to go downtown and paint the old garbage cans, and a coat of paint it wasn't covering it. I mean, they were just so rusty and dented and broken that it seems like steel. It's not it may be good for a while, but for the long haul, it seems like the concrete type material seems to be perhaps more sturdy, and I like the way those were molded with the city logo on them, so they look really nice. So I'm just wondering if those were not considered at all for this next phase.
Right, so we did use a lot of those, and as you mentioned, Councilman Salazar, in like the park settings, and those are concrete, as you mentioned, material, and I think I can't remember the cost right now. It could be about $2,000 or $2,500 for both, or it could be a little bit less. I know that we purchased several of them through the Cal Recycle grant that we received, and so. That is an option. If it's on the table too. But I think we didn't consider that because being kind of in other downtown areas, majority of the downtowns have used steel, and then seeing those the ones in the that we use at Posey Park, as well as the rec center are more of a park setting. So we decided that we decided to use those there instead.
Okay. And do we have any idea in terms of just durability? How do the materials compare? I mean, are we talking about, if the steel ones have to be replaced every 10 years and the concrete ones have to be replaced every 20 years, clearly you're getting a better bargain. So I'm just wondering if, and again, looking at the condition of the ones we have, the concrete portion of the old existing garbage cans seems to be pretty sturdy versus the steel doors and the tops, which tend to get dented, scratched, rusted, and everything else. So, I mean, any idea on the longevity of the materials?
Yeah, I would say, I would agree with you that this concrete would definitely last longer, over time, because it's more durable than steel. And I just don't know how long the steel receptacles will last, because I don't have much of an experience, and I can ask other agencies to see how often they actually have to go out there and replace their receptacles. I can do that. And then the concrete ones that we have at the park, we've just started using, but it still looks like it's in a great shape so far.
Okay. All right. And then just one comment regarding the big bellies. I know that they generally have more of an application in areas that don't have regular pickups. And so the advantage is that you let them fill up until they need to be emptied, and then somebody gets dispatched to do it. In this case, where we have regular daily pickups, it doesn't really make any sense, because even if you're sending out alerts, you're not going to pick up more than once. It really wouldn't make sense. So I know that they found some good applications in rural areas, parks, that perhaps a ranger is responsible for picking up trash there, and so they wouldn't have to go out there on a regular basis. They would wait for the signal to come in, and then they would go out and empty the trash. So I don't think that they would make sense in this situation. That was it.
Okay. Vice Mayor, I know you're up next, but I wanted to allow Councilmember Mason, since she hasn't had an opportunity yet, hear from her. Then I'll double check to see if there's anybody from the public, and then come back. Councilmember Mason.
Thank you. I don't know if should I just ask all the questions at one time?
Sure, please.
So I just wanted to get clarity, and maybe I just missed it, but I know at the beginning of the presentation we talked about how the streetscape plan recommended the stainless steel. I'm not stuck on stainless steel. I am just curious to know why we veered from stainless steel. Is the first question. The next question is, I just want to make sure, since it's a study session, that we do look at the option of the cigarette butts being somehow linked to the garbage or recycling cans. The third question is, and Vice Mayor Medina kind of touched on it, but I think Director Tan, you responded as far as the servicing of the trash cans. My understanding in speaking with a neighboring city is that one of their city departments actually takes the garbage cans every 2 weeks and actually power washes them. And it keeps them clean, and then it makes sure that obviously they're maintained and the longevity is better and they look look cleaner. So I want to make sure I follow up on that question to ask: is our city staff, is Recology, is anybody actually taking those garbage cans and power washing them outside of just the Recology picking up the garbage on a daily basis? And then my next one is just really a suggestion and really thinking outside the box for the magazine stands. So in the staff report, it said that there were 5 magazine stands, and it looks like the encroachment we only really need if it's facing the street, but the ones facing the wall may not be needed. I don't know how necessary it is, since you're not going to be able to see the work, you know, in the back. But I guess my question is, can we just rethink the way that we have magazine stands? I know in San Bruno, really, it's popular now. I think it'll be popular later, but is actually just building our own little, almost like little libraries. We can paint them how we want. They're very cute, very unique. I think they have a lot of character to our downtown. And as opposed to having a magazine stand that's just your standard magazine stand, why couldn't the Daily Journal put their papers in, you know, a customized, almost like, I'm using the little library as a reference, but a wooden box. And we could do that for definitely the ones that aren't that are free, because the ones obviously that aren't free have to use a magazine stand. But anyway, just a suggestion, and I don't know if our staff could build them. I know the ones I've seen around the city, volunteers have been building them. And then my last question is just, I believe that Councilmember Hamilton may have already mentioned it, but do we need the 5 magazine stands? I mean, how many do we need, or do we need them in the locations they're at? So maybe we could keep the 5, but we put one in, you know, near Centennial Park or near Posey Park, where someone could sit down, and we encourage, you know, people to sit down and read a magazine and use those benches. So just a suggestion. I know I should say there's one in front of Centennial Park now because West Coast Cafe is there, but maybe one in front of like Posey Park. So just some thoughts and questions. Thank you.
City staff.
Great, thank you. Do my best here to try to answer all their questions, Councilmember Mason. The first one you mentioned, why do we veer away from the stainless steel, you know, trash receptacles from the streetscape plan? We thought that, you know, after talking to our maintenance personnel, we believe that, you know, stainless steel, you know, if people, you know, start throwing trash into the receptacles, sometimes they, you know, may tend to fall out or they miss, and it could stain the, you know, the exterior of that. So there'll be more maintenance involved, probably more power washing that needs to be done, you know, to the stainless steel in order to get the, you know, the dirt out. So we thought, you know, having a black, you know, receptacles would be a little bit easier aesthetically, you know, not have to do as much maintenance as would require for stainless steel. So that's my response to that. In regards to the cigarette butts, currently, right now, you know, none of the options presented have the cigarette butt option. But you know, if that, you know, that's an interest, something that the city, you know, staff can look into to see whether any of the receptacles actually provides any options to include some, you know, cigarette butts or not. So that's something that we can look into as well. See, servicing the trash cans for power washing. You know, I can talk to our staff. I don't believe that, you know, staff are actually taking the garbage can, you know, out and then power washing the garbage cans and then bringing it back to the site. That's not being done. I don't think Ecology is doing that as well, because they're just picking up the garbage and then they're just, you know, servicing that the waste for the city. So so I can talk to the staff a little bit more to see whether, you know, that's being done or not. Magazine stands, you know, I think there's plenty of options that are available, but most of the ones that we've seen are metal. That's what a lot of the agencies are using. But if there's an interest to have wooden boxes, you know, in certain locations, you know, that's something that can be looked at. But you know, I just don't know. You know, we'll probably have to have somebody actually, you know, makes it for the city. It depends on the design as well. So we have to, you know, there's more evaluation that needs to be done if there's an interest to look at other types of boxes, you know, for the magazine stands. And the locations, you know, you mentioned about whether, you know, we need magazine stands at, you know, other locations. That's something that we can evaluate right now, because, you know, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, and there's a lot of locations that have empty boxes right now. So maybe there's a way for us to combine them. And yeah, you can put one in Posey Park, as you mentioned, that we don't currently have one. I know that Centennial Park with West Coast Cafe being close by, there's 2 boxes there. And, we'll definitely have to evaluate each individual locations again before we proceed with the replacement.
Great. And then just as a follow-up, and I want to be clear, I'm not trying to create more work. No, I don't think we need more magazine racks. I think it's just, what I'm just suggesting is either condense them or look at where they are and maybe, where would be the nice location to have them, or where they're going to be maximized.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you. And then just one last note I just had. I guess as we're thinking towards implementing the streetscape plan, we don't have design guidelines necessarily, but I'm looking at the Aperture building, and then how Artichoke Joe's, I think that the update that they're doing to their building kind of matches the Aperture in some ways I remember when I was on the planning commission. And then on 111 Huntington, they have some wood in their design. So when we're looking at these cans, and this is for you or for the city manager, should we be thinking also of what these future buildings are going to look like?
City manager?
Sure. I would say absolutely, but more importantly, what our future street furniture and streetscape will look like, because we are setting the tone through this acquisition and installation on whatever design we pick, because we're going to want complementary street furniture, be they replacing the light poles at some point, adding street benches or other bicycle racks to be complementary. And Director Tam is exactly right. We went away from stainless steel because we wanted a darker color, not necessarily black, due to a decreased maintenance and concern about graffiti on stainless steel and constantly having to clean that. Councilmember, you did mention a couple other things that I wanted to address. One was the enclosure. Absolutely, when a newspaper rack faces the building, we would potentially just do an enclosure on either side, not necessarily waste resources and put an enclosure in the back. With regard to a wooden newspaper or magazine rack or other varying racks, one of the concepts was really to decrease the clutter and have one stand that's bounded by the enclosure. It's also important to note that the newspaper racks, whether they are free or paid, actually have free speech protection, and we have to provide a reasonable access. And so when we look at decreasing the number of newspaper sort of individual boxes, we may have one that is a 8-gang box, but only 4 are taken. We may not want to just make that 4, because if someone else comes along, they may have the ability to put their plastic or whatever their stand looks like right next to ours. So we may want to allow for some flexibility. But certainly it seems like we have too many out there, and we can go through the process of decreasing. But part of the plan, especially because our sidewalks are relatively narrow, was to have sort of a decrease in street furniture and contain the newspaper stands in sort of one area versus having sort of I'm sure you've seen them elsewhere, where there's one stand and then there may be a number of other individual stands next door to that. So.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Is there anyone from the community that wishes to speak? I had asked for hands, and I was going to check in after Councilmember Mason. Not seeing any, we will then keep it with City Council. Close that and bring it back to Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just wanted to follow up on some of the other comments from my colleagues. Whatever grants we can get, of course, that's a high priority, and I'm sure staff is really good at that, as has been exhibited of late. The option, if not to have cigarette butts incorporated, or cups or containers within the garbage container, but there's still a lot of people that smoke and that are just throwing their cigarette butts in on the gutter. It's just that's where they finally wind up. And if we could ask staff to also look into some additional cigarette butt containers. I know there's one kind of over by Knowles and Starbucks, and then one over at Artichoke Joe's. So if we're going to do a little bit looking around, if we could maybe see something that wouldn't take too much time to see what's available, to put those out so that people hopefully will not throw them in the gutter. I believe the cost on the Big Belly, after talking with some friends in Millbrae, that the costs have come down, not substantially, but they have operation data of showing that it is cost efficient. So as Councilmember Hamilton said, having a few in some locations that are heavily used, and maybe we'll see how that goes. I know that Mayor Medina and I asked to see if maybe Starbucks would be willing to pay for a Big Belly by their store, since they generate a lot of disposable cups. So those are my things of what I've heard from my colleagues. And again, thank you. This is a step in the right direction. And as Councilmember Hamilton said, we can pursue this a la carte of what we can afford and making these improvements, and looking forward to this discussion in further depth during our priority session meeting this upcoming weekend. So thank you all for your attention.
A few things for myself is that the streetscapes plan, and the city manager can correct me, but it was adopted in a phased element, and it was phased out because of that factor. So you could do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. There was a dollar amount set aside because obviously it all could not be done at once. So this is what that plan was adopted and what it is doing. On the Posey Park, the picture the city manager showed us, I saw that the trash receptacle and the recycling receptacle were not side by side, because to me, if one fills, I think, I'm sorry, but a person is just going to say, well, at least it's not on the ground. My concern again for the recycling is it's contaminated. And we know that that's been a high cost that has occurred for our city, is when they're going to people's homes and they've contaminated the recycling. And that is what is up the price to our contracts. The other thing is on the cigarette butts, I see them on the poles, and I think maybe they're more at eye level. I'm not sure if they see them. But connecting a cigarette butt next to the trash receptacle, or, I don't know, I think smoldering heat next to the trash could be good, bad, but if it doesn't make it into the right spot, we've got a can fire potentially. I share some of the same issues of, do we need all the newspaper racks? We have to have them, and I do appreciate that. Maybe at the time that we're doing that, unless we've already gone through it, maybe we review our practice. If we're owning them and we're responsible, where before it was the other way around. And if we cited it, it's supposed to come down. It has to be held for so long because we didn't purchase it. So I would think if we change that we have them in the rest of the community, do we need to modify our ordinance on a municipal code for that? I think lids are important. I'm worried about durability. So, like the ones at Posey Park, how have they held up and durable? Does the crew see that it's contaminated in the recycling? Do they take care of the recycling? Or is that Recology? Over at Glenview Earl, are those, hasn't been a long time, but how are they holding up? One thing that former Vice Mayor Iber and I had done when we went to go new lights in San Mateo Avenue, we picked a few spots where the wind factor came to make sure they had durability and they could last, because that was the problem with the initial ones, is the wind and the elements out there got to them. So I know you've heard a lot from us, and Mr. Hamilton had talked about maybe if it's not too out of line with price, maybe you have a little something unique to San Bruno on its side for the newspaper racks. But again, if it's cost prohibitive, then I get it. So, City Manager, any final thoughts, comments, or feedback?
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and push the City Council to give us a little bit clearer direction, because there have been a lot of comments and questions, and I know that this has been a very long project to study and test, and the pilot trash can that's out in front of Starbucks has been there I think almost over 2.5 years. And so what I don't want us to do is to not leave here with clear direction, and we're going on a bit of a analysis to analyze the durability of all the 9 cans that we proposed, and coming back with a host of answers, and then potentially have more questions. What we had hoped was to sort of narrow down to, if not a trash receptacle, one or two trash receptacles, come back to the City Council during budget time with our analysis on how we would fund it, and then run as fast as we can towards implementation. And so if I can have Director Tan put up the 9 options that we provided.
Yeah. Could you put up slide number 7, receptacle options? Right. It gives 9 at a visual together, and that would be excellent.
And so let's take and let's do full screen. And let's take first off sort of number 1 is what we have in front of Starbucks. Number 2 is very similar to that. And number 2 comes with a lid. I think we've articulated the challenges, and we frankly see the challenges with number 1 in our community. And so why don't I pose the question of council options 1 or 2? Are any of you interested in us pursuing that model further?
You know, and I really can't see everybody. Okay, I can see Mr. Hamilton. Thank you, sir. That helps. It does. Okay, I'm just broadening the screen. If there's anybody with a thumbs up for 1 and 2, just go ahead and put so I can see it in the screen. The City Manager can.
Okay, so I see no yeses on 1 or 2.
Okay, is that fair, team? Okay.
Okay, and so now let's go to options 3, 4, and 5, which are similar in that they have slats, albeit maybe a nice aesthetic design, but may have some of the challenges that we've experienced with number 1. And I believe that all of these we can get in a recycling model that has a different size top. So let's not let that be the deciding factor, and they come in multiple colors. But is there anything about options 3, 4, and 5 that the council would like to consider?
I can tell you I don't care for 3 with that flat, because I think people will use it as for a cup holder. I think they'll sit on it, and so I like it where it's more curved. So I'm not a fan of 3 the way that looks and is for me.
I like 5, but not the others.
I liked some of these until I heard the concern about the trash getting stuck in the slats, which makes perfect sense, and not something that I had considered until I heard that. So I'm not a big fan of any of them because of that, because of the maintenance and how it will end up looking over time.
Would the vertical slats be as problematic as the horizontal slats, or actually the other way around? I know the vertical ones are a problem, but the horizontal slats equally as problematic.
That's a staff question.
Yeah.
I don't know that I know the answer to that.
It seems like trash would be less likely to get stuck in the sideways slots. That's why I'm thinking 5 might be, if out of those, 5 might be the more practical.
Yeah, and I think what happens more often than trash being stuck in the slots is when the top comes off and the interior can is emptied, there's waste that falls in the interior, and because there are slats, you can see the waste. And so it's a maintenance issue, which we know we have a challenge with that level of maintenance now, given our staff.
And with 5, it looks like it has a door, so you could open it and clean the interior portion of it versus the ones that are just cylinders.
That's true.
I don't like any of the ones with covers. I just feel like I've seen way too many garbage cans overflow at this point. But I also like 5. And I would just say 3. I'm not really a fan of the design of 3, but if we're going to have the magazine encroachments, it actually reminds me as if they're matching a little bit, but I don't know, it's kind of weird. But I would pick 5 of the first 5, but with no top.
I would pick 5. I'm still feeling a top, but out of those 3 choices, 5 is the only one that I would pick.
Okay.
I think the top is. I agree, Councilmember Mason, with the problems that we have with overflowing, but without the top, the rain gets in them as well.
Yeah.
And it just gets really gross in there.
Yeah.
Amber.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah. 5 would be my second choice. We haven't got to my first choice, and I would like to not just give one, because if
oh no, he's asking for a few.
Yeah. Okay. So it would be 5 of the first 5, and it has to have a top. Otherwise, the rain gets in there, and it just gets extra heavy and nasty. So.
Okay. So I'm kind of hearing from everybody out of 1 through 5. I'm seeing that 5 has made it to the next round, and now we're going to move to 6 through 9. And City Manager, you're doing it so well. Do you want to do 6, 7, 8, or do you want to do them all, or how do you want to break that one up?
Well, let's do 6, 7, 8 because I know number 9. If council wants to go there, it's only in a few locations. So 6, 7, and 8. Again, 7 and 8 are versions of the same can that we have at Earl Glenview. 8 is wood, which is different from all of them. Potentially a nice aesthetic feature, potentially also a maintenance issue and harder to resurface over time, or etched in graffiti with a key or Sharpie or a sharp object is harder to repair than repainting. So something to think of. But between 6, 7, and 8, any comment from council?
I had liked initially the look of 8, and immediately I went to that seems really easy to deface with graffiti, which is a shame that has to be a number 1 concern. But I don't think 8 would last long. The 6 is. This is going to sound weird. 6 is probably one of the least aesthetically pleasing of all the options, but it seems sturdy and it seems practical. It's got a door. It seems like something that's going to stand up to the rigors of San Mateo Avenue. So that's the one that I'm kind of gravitating toward in this set.
Thank you. Next, who would like to go next? Councilmember Mason.
So I think even just going into this, I really liked 5, 8, and 9. But 8, I'm looking at the report. I mean, for $1,200 each, can we maybe just double check and make sure they haven't already thought of graffiti? I mean, maybe there's there's got to be something, because I thought the same thing was, how are we going to get the graffiti off the wood? But maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something on it that's resistant or easy to clean. Can we just double check that? Because I do like the aesthetic of 8.
So certainly we can look into that. One of the things I was articulating was sort of graffiti in the sense of etching something in, like you see on trees, right? People carve into the wood.
Okay. Next person, please.
Mr. Mayor, or is that me?
Yes, please go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the problem with number 6, you have 62 pounds of steel compared to number 7 with 192 pounds. So it's probably really thin walled. So it looks short and stocky and tough, but probably not going to hold up. I would go with 7. 8 would be great in a park because with the wood, there are not enough trees in our downtown, so it's really going to stand out kind of funky, like a sore thumb. And we'll get to 9 later.
Mr. Salazar.
I think I agree with Tom. 6 isn't gorgeous, but it does seem very practical compared to the others. 8 is probably the most attractive, but the maintenance concerns are definitely an issue. And it seems like number 6 too. The opening is a little smaller than the other ones, and so that would help actually with the dumping. So you're not as likely to have people bring their trash from home or from a business and try to stuff it through one of those slots. So you might have less of a problem with that. But yeah, I guess the material would be a concern if it's not as sturdy. I didn't pay attention to the weights like Marty did, but that's definitely a concern as well. We want to make sure that it's going to hold up.
I was going to say aesthetically 8 I like, but I do have that concern as far as just it's being vandalized to some capacity, and so that is a major concern. Though I kind of like the imagery. 7 looks very similar too, but it just, to my eye, it doesn't wow me. Not that I need to be wowed by a garbage can, but it just doesn't seem to be as just doesn't stand out. 6 I do have some likes about it because of what Councilmember Hamilton said, but I appreciate the Vice Mayor, as that durability is going to matter and count for longevity. So you're kind of, so what you've done, City Manager, is you've got us all on one on the top line, but we're kind of going around a little bit on the bottom line. So I think 8 comes back to us as far as kind of vandalism, withstand, withhold, etc. I think 6, we've been asked just about the weight and the durability. Does anybody want to see 7 even looked at? Seeing 1 no, 2 no's.
Yeah, I would say no on 7. I would. I didn't honestly didn't even notice the overall weight of 6, and so I would like it to still be in consideration, but I would advise staff to, if there's any physical examples of them nearby where we can go look at one in real life to see if it is sturdy or not, because I'm concerned with Vice Mayor Medina brought up some good points there that if those are thin walled, one good kick in the side could dent it in if it's not very thick. So if it is sturdy, I still like 6, but if it's not sturdy, then of course I don't.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Perhaps they have a heavy duty version of that. If you look at the cost at $620, it's way underpriced compared to the other one, so it's probably pretty flimsy. Price generally goes with quality. So I did think the one at number 7, which is at Glenview currently, I think it's okay, but I'm not. If we can find a number 6 that's sturdier, then I think I'm hoping that they would make it like that. So let's see what staff says when they do a little more work on it.
And I did go to Glenview Earl Park, and those look fine, and they seem, but again, they're not getting the usage as a San Mateo Avenue would. We know that. So, City Manager, did that help you at all, or did that just give you now 4 garbage cans? You're on mute.
So let's summarize. 5, yes. Council likes the aesthetics of 6, but concern that the cost being the second lowest and the weight may equate to not being as sturdy. A universal like of the aesthetics of 8, but concern about maintenance and of the wood primarily. 7, which is that Earl Glenview, just sort of not wowing anyone. What I'll say about 7 and 8 is, as far as sort of weight and the gauge of the steel, they appear to be some of the strongest of those that we're showing. And so 8 and 7 have the same sort of thick gauge steel and weigh the most, or 7 and 8. We can take a look at a version of 6 and try and find something similar, and certainly 5. And then we'll ask the questions about 8 because we certainly understand that council likes 8. Now, let me actually ask this question, because while we're looking at the wood, and we know it's wood, it does come in various paint options. So does council like the two-tone look to it? And if we could virtually find something that's similar but is steel but painted in a way that sort of has that contrast, is that what council is reacting to?
I would say yes. One of the things about 8 that stands out is that it's not just a mono-colored blob. It has a lot more interest.
Correct. Any other thoughts?
Sure. They have different colors of it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think, City Manager, I don't think people dislike 7. And I was one that said something, but it just looks like it's there. And maybe it didn't look so bad in Glenview, but I think you're correct in your assessment about the two-tone. I think is maybe appealing to some folks. Councilmember Mason or Salazar?
To the mayor. If possible, if whoever's making these, if they could let us know where 8 maybe is, we can take a look just to see how it's standing up, or if it's been a year or so. I don't know. Just a suggestion, because I do really like 8. I'm curious to know how it's going to look in 5 years.
Fair enough. Okay, and so
wait, hold on, Mr. Salazar, anything to add?
No, not really. I mean, it is nice looking. So, and we do want to have a few options. So let's see if there's some evidence out there that it could work for us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 9.
So what I think I heard about 9 is in high traffic, high waste areas. I think we all universally agree that could be near Starbucks. And I think the question is, what other areas are sort of high traffic? Potentially at the corner of Angus and San Mateo Ave, rings the bell, near Grand Leader and Marimar. And we can look for other locations. But I believe what I've heard from the city council is look at a big belly option in high traffic areas, or I've heard that from some. I'm not sure if there's a majority support for that. Cost is, of course, as shown, roughly $4,000. But given that we service 5 days a week, and given that I think we've heard that there is overflowing or high levels of garbage on the weekend in those high traffic areas, this is one option that we can certainly consider.
So I think you had council willing to look into some in strategically placed locations that would be of value to keep things cleaner and communities' needs. And one thing I am going to say too is do we need as many garbage cans as we have currently? So can it be reduced by 2 or 4 or 5? I'm not the expert on that. And then again, you want one recyclable each one of them. So that's doubling what we have currently, because right now we have a garbage can. So just want to be mindful of that. Do we need recyclables at each of the locations, or can they be spread further out, or maybe at the high traffic areas that produce, have the foods and other things like that? And then I'm sorry, Councilmember Hamilton.
If we're going to remove a trash can from any location, I would hope that we would use some kind of data, even anecdotal data from Recology and staff who are picking up the garbage, and which ones are typically mostly empty, or if it's uniform that they're almost always full, all the way up and down the avenue, then removing any that wouldn't make much sense. But if there's ones that are lightly used, then sure, we can talk about taking those out. But we would need to know. We would need to have that data.
Are there comments on 9 plus any closing? Councilmember Mason.
Yeah, I would just say 9. A couple of things is I'm not sure if that bottom is. Can your foot open it? Is it a foot, like a foot pedal, or is it you have to touch it?
I don't know.
Director Tan,
I'm not sure if that's a foot opening or not, but yeah, I've only pulled the handle down to expose my waist.
Okay. So I mean, just something, but like post-COVID, right, world is all the other cans, you don't have to touch anything. The other thing I would say is these are I have seen them, and they're definitely get your attention. So I think where we put these has to be very strategic, because they can be very overwhelming because of their size. So to not take away maybe from another project or something else that we're trying to work on. But I think just off the top of my head, I agree with maybe in certain locations where there's more garbage, I do just want to think about the fact that you do have to touch it, and that they're very big compared to the others. And I know that just for staff, the Los Primos market, the one diagonal from Grand Leader, they have a big garbage problem. There's always garbage overflowing in that location. And so I don't know what can be done about it. I think people are going out and throwing their garbage there, but that's another location we've got to think about maybe having a larger garbage can. So in addition to Starbucks. Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton?
That is indeed a foot pedal. That will open it automatically, and it appears to be it appears to be an option, because if you look at slide 16 that has a picture of them in real life, those don't have it.
And I guess nowadays you should be having that, right? Because for ADA and what have you, there's got to be a second option or opportunity for that. Okay, City Manager, does that give you enough?
Yeah, so to recap, we will do further investigation on item 5, potentially a stronger version of 6. Look into 8, primarily durability and serviceability of the wood. And if staff determines that it may cause a significant maintenance issue, look potentially at a version that has a varying color pattern. And look at number 9 for high trash areas where there's enough space, and definitely if we get them, have the foot pedal option.
Okay. Well, thank you, staff, and thank you, council, for the discussion. If we can stop sharing the screen, and we will then consider the study session portion over. We're going to move on to comments from council members. First one will be Tom Hamilton and Marty Medina, and this is an update from the Clean San Bruno Action Committee or committee. And then whomever would like to take this, please.
So I will go ahead and share my screen, and with the Vice Mayor's agreement, I'll kick us off the first couple slides and throw to you.
Yes, let me make sure I got my, okay, I'm on. Hey, so yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Tom Hamilton. It's been a pleasure working with you, let me tell you. We were assigned to this committee by the mayor and the council, and we had 3 community Zoom meetings. We took a lot of input, and let me make it absolutely clear that we understand that what we're doing tonight is only reporting out. And I think I need to take my glasses off here. So,
actually, Mr. Vice Mayor, I had actually said that I would take these first 2 and then throw to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you would rather. I've got it ready to go on this one.
Okay, go for it, sir.
Sorry to misunderstand there.
No, it's quite all right.
So yeah, as Vice Mayor Medina said, this is a report out only. We're providing recommendations, knowing that all actions will require council approval. And our goal here was to give you all this information in preparation for our priority setting meeting, which is happening this weekend. So we didn't want to be bringing possible ideas into that session that would be coming out of the blue for all of you. So as was said, we've built this presentation iteratively over 3 community Zoom meetings. So the first version of this presentation was small, and we got a lot of great ideas from the public as we've been going through it, and we've been incorporating it into the presentation as we go. You'll see when you get the copy of the presentation that there's a lot of material that's in the appendix, because we wanted to be respectful of your time here tonight and not have a 40-minute presentation. So we've condensed the presentation part to the highlights and takeaways, but there's a lot of information in the appendix that we would encourage you to look at as well. The intent here is to provide ideas, and we're not advocating that we must do every single one of the ideas that are in this deck. And we understand there's priorities and cost considerations and all of that. So we want to make sure that we're sharing all the information that we've gathered. And we also like to mention that the focus on this that's been happening here in 2021 is really getting results. We've been seeing noticeable improvements in our neighborhoods. Residents are starting to pitch in and clean up their own neighborhoods outside of all the organized cleanups that have been happening. So that's nothing but good. All right. Back to you.
My turn? All right, excellent. So yeah, in these meetings, as we're reviewing things, basically, what are the sources of the garbage? Where is it coming from? And it's coming from households. It's coming from us. It's coming from apartment complexes and construction projects. People are basically littering. We have overflowing garbage cans. We have businesses not maintaining their properties and not providing enough garbage cans. And then there's the times where we do have these homeless encampments where it's a high visual problem. Go ahead, Tom.
So as for why folks are dumping, there's all kinds of reasons. As a society, we've become more reliant on disposable items that generate more garbage. This has been exacerbated here in the past year during COVID, as people have been getting more takeout and more deliveries of goods to their homes, trying to not go out into the community. So that's been generating a lot more trash. People are living in larger households and creating more garbage that will fit into the can. Some households don't upsize their garbage cans to the larger size because of the cost of doing so. So they don't have enough room in their can. People move and they don't want their old stuff and they don't want to pay to dispose of it. So they leave a couch in front of an apartment, like we see in the slide here. And then we also have problems with contractors dumping to avoid paying disposal fees, which is we've seen a lot of that around town.
Very great. So in continuing with that, our law enforcement and code enforcement, they can't be everywhere. And it's very difficult to catch people actually dumping and littering. Some public agencies and businesses do not maintain their property in timely ways, which some people could say it actually invites more dumping. And it comes down to it, we just have some people that really just don't care about their community as they trash it.
So As far as who can we get involved to help combat this problem, the answer is everyone, as evidenced by the number of bullets on this slide. So you'll see that obviously there's us as the council, and we've been forming this action subcommittee was part of that. City manager, city departments, including the library for communication efforts. Police and code enforcement already at the forefront of this, as of course is Public Works. We think the county can do more. The county has land around here, and they also have resources. We want to get our Chamber of Commerce involved. Ecology is an obvious candidate to be a good partner with this. Already is a good partner in many ways. Our schools, and one area that was brought up by some of our community members was to leverage our students who need service hours for graduation, and possible workforce to help with various issues. The owners of our large apartment complexes. A lot of the problems that we see are the result of apartment dwellers not having places to throw things, especially large items. So getting the owners of those complexes involved. Our outside agencies who have land around us, Caltrans, Caltrain, BART, SFO. Some of these partners, we've been seeing some really great successes. There was just today, BART did a huge cleanup along Huntington Avenue, which was very, very welcomed. Some of our outside agencies need to do way more than what they're doing. We've got our service clubs, Lions, Rotary, and Scouts. Lions have already stepped up to help in this area, and there's other service clubs who could. We have neighborhood watch groups that maybe we can get involved, our faith-based organizations, our businesses, and all of us as residents.
So some of the deterrence and enforcement ideas that we came up with within our community is basic signage, increasing the signage, more at bus stops, at the BART station, around the mall, potentially looking at increased citation amounts, looking at potential ordinances requiring covered loads in San Bruno, building permits to have disposal verification component, requiring property owners to take reasonable steps to prevent dumping at move out. And one thing that we noticed of late is the number of donation boxes that have been popping up around town in the last couple of weeks, and how do we regulate the placement and maintenance of these donation boxes that can sometimes turn into like just dumping locations.
Okay, sorry. Having trouble moving the slide ahead. 1 sec, sorry. There we go. This come up a few times during our discussions with residents. The broken window theory, which is that people tend to trash areas that are not appealing and respect areas that are appealing. So where we're looking at this is that if we can be faster on picking up dumping, we could potentially discourage future dumping in those same areas. If I see that there's always dumping on my corner, and then now I've got a couch, well then the corner is apparently where you throw couches, and that's where I'm going to throw mine. I don't throw couches anywhere. And so the whole idea is that welcoming spaces would deter dumping. So there's things we can try to encourage: community gardens, public artwork, large shade trees, sitting areas, and encourage these throughout San Bruno.
One other thing that Tom and I have been working on is getting the contact people, and like he said today, we have a great contact at BART that very communicative, and I know of 2 cleanups in the last month that they are making big moves on and making it better. So we need to we're suggesting reviewing and improving the existing contracts and resolution processes, exploring maintenance agreements with these public agencies where city staff and contractors can respond to cleanup requests and putting the request on the agency property and then bill the agency for the work. So making them accountable or making them pay. And as the absolute last resort is potential legal action if they just fail to act. And we don't want to have to do that, but all agencies, all property owners need to be more responsible in cleaning up their property.
So as we all know, there's been community cleanup efforts going on. We want making sure to focus on safety of volunteers and also providing guidelines around cleanups near homeless encampments, making sure that people understand that you can't just take someone's stuff and toss it out. So we've been trying to be very communicative with the organizers and volunteers of these groups to make sure that everybody understands that. The city is looking at or is planning on additional community events like the one at City Hall last fall, and we know that Mayor Medina and Councilmember Salazar are organizing their next event. We appreciate that very much. Thank you. We would, and I've already communicated this to the mayor, that the communication efforts around this really needs to be expanded so everybody knows about it, and especially to our apartment complexes, to make sure that the folks in the apartments know that this resource is available, since they do not have access to large dumps through Recology. And then again, there's a potential to partner with our neighborhood watch groups to organize their own small cleanups in specific neighborhoods.
All right. So what should the public do if they see dumping, when it's dumping in progress? Do not engage. Do not engage the person doing it. Make a note of the license plate, vehicle description of the person, and you call the San Bruno Police Department. Let them handle it. If you see dumped items, go to San Bruno Responds and use that app. That app is the primary way to communicate to the city for things that need service. And register your camera with the San Bruno Police Department. It's pretty simple. Tom could tell you, I think it took him around 30 seconds to register it or something like that, some record, I think.
Yeah, this was suggested by a resident during one of the listening events that we had. And when I went to go put this on the slide, I've got a camera out in front of my house, so I went to that link and I was done in 40 seconds. 40 seconds. Turn my camera with PD. And it's my option to do that. It's not a requirement, but if folks want to pitch in and help in that way, it's super easy to do.
So I think Tom, this slide basically was just making sure people knew who to contact when it was their property, and it could also have been put in the appendix, but it's here for people to know that these are the agencies that are servicing San Bruno, that are also own properties in San Bruno, that we get complaints that it's not on city property, that it's on somebody else's property, and it's their responsibility to take care of it.
All right, so our current recommendations. So we've got just a couple slides here. We're near the end. I know it's getting late.
Two more.
We recommend that we continue refining San Bruno Responds, the app. It's had a lot of success, but there are areas where we feel that we can improve. It would be great if we understand that when staff picks up a particular area that they're taking a picture, and it would be great if we have the ability for staff to upload a picture into that ticket when marking the ticket as complete. It would be good to be able to use the data coming out of San Bruno Response to help identify hotspots, to see if perhaps there's something we can do to help mitigate specific areas where there's repeated dumping with cameras or whatever. And then, in that same vein, just metrics, being able to get, we're collecting all of this data as part of the effort to do this cleanup, and being able to leverage that to understand what's happening so we can have better mitigation to try to prevent the dumping in the first place. This is a resource that I think we can tap a little better. Consider, and then there was a slide on this earlier, we potentially would want to consider ordinances to require covered loads in San Bruno, meaning, if you have an open bed truck and you're carrying stuff, that be covered so that things don't blow out. Require building permits to have a disposal verification component, making sure that contractors have a plan for getting rid of construction waste. Require property owners to take reasonable steps to prevent dumping and move out. We spoke with the city attorney. We understand there's been conversations in this area already. This is a difficult thing to get after, but if there's a way to get after it, we should. That's why we have it here on the list. And then regulate the placement and require regular maintenance of donation boxes. This was a late-breaking addition because this is a problem that's really come to the forefront just in the past few weeks. And then with Recology, so right out of the gate, before we mention anything with Recology, we know we have a contract with Recology. If we wanted to make changes to that, that's a negotiation. We understand all of that. So we're still making some suggestions here, but we're absolutely neither of us called up Recology and said start doing this or that. So we understand the process. This first one goes hand in hand with San Bruno response, exploring the potential of having Recology respond to at least some tickets from San Bruno response. If that would be, obviously that would be a pretty major contract amendment, but if especially if city staff is stretched, it's absolutely a resource we should explore. Explore extending large pickups to apartments. Then we received some conflicting info about the way the large pickups are supposed to work, but we do know that option is not available for apartments today. Modifying our garbage cans so that they have latches to keep them closed, and because we live in a windy place, and if your garbage can isn't closed, or if it blows open, then the trash gets blown all around, and we see that as a problem in many neighborhoods. And so having a latch and having Recology have a requirement that you need to be able to latch if you can't latch it, then you're putting too much in the can, and that's a problem. Something to explore there. And then lastly, just collaborate with them for better communication regarding waste reduction and disposal options. And there's a lot of information that we gathered about Recology that's in the appendix as well.
So this is the last slide before questions. So another recommendation is to explore the Sheriff Department work program to provide additional cleanup resources. And really overall to improve and expand communication efforts. The city should improve communication regarding the efforts being taken to keep the city clean, and to build upon the successes that police and fire have had with their use of social media, and to extend it to public works. And lastly, ensure broad communication about City Hall pickup item drop-off events, especially to our apartment residents and others who do not receive a utility bill, right? Because if you don't get the bill, you don't know there's a disposal event if you're not on social media. So making sure that more people are aware of it, so they don't resort to dumping it. That's our last slide, and we're ready to take any questions.
If you could stop sharing so we can all see each other.
Sure.
Which is easier, but thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so first and foremost, thank you, Vice Mayor and Council Member. And Vice Mayor, he does do good at this PowerPoint stuff, huh?
That's that guy.
I know. But yes, but thank you both for holding those and reaching out. And I know the Vice Mayor and I are still working on some contact data, so that we can have that. And then the Council Member Salazar can announce probably pretty soon about the event, which would be, again, as you said, for e-waste, paint, large dump for San Bruno residents with ID. You already alluded to, the only thing that came close to mind was like the latches on the lid. But one thing that I know we always hear is that folks are trying to maybe put into a 20-gallon for cost savings what is in a 32. And it's been made clear is that during this whole COVID-19, they have been lenient toward that, but they have the right to where when you have the can up at 45 degrees, you know, it does go all over. Or as well as you run out in the gray, so you throw it in the blue. And now once you've done that, you've contaminated it. So now it costs all of us more because now they can't go through the recycling process. But aside from that, I want to open to my colleagues. Thank you for the outreach. Thank you for the presentation. And most importantly, thank you because you're right. This is nice to have it ahead of time so that we can have it going through our mind process and try to do strategic planning, and we're all kind of on the same page as far as what you know and what you shared. And so I appreciate that. With that, why don't I open it up to any questions from colleagues? Because I know we'll be talking about it come soon, but still. Councilmember Mason.
So my question's not so much around the presentation. Excellent presentation, by the way. Thank you so much. A lot of information. My question is around that this was an ad hoc committee that was created. And so the recommendations have been provided, which is great. And so does the committee continue, or do the recommendations now go to, implementation, or how? I'm not sure, because this is, I think, the first ad hoc committee that has reported back, at least since I've been on the council in this way.
I don't agree with that, but that's not here. Let's talk about what good work we've just seen done. As I think, and Councilmember Hamilton can correct me, but that's why he said he wanted it now. So when we get into our Friday, Saturday discussions, and if we start talking about strategic initiatives, as I said, they can't do everything, but what is important, and are these things that staff and the council wants to prioritize. And I think that was another great indication why they wanted us to have this data in our head so that we're verse ready to go on Friday and Saturday. That's how I'm interpreting it. Councilmember Vice Mayor, correct me.
Yes, so that was the intention, was to get all this information out there so that we weren't trying to convey this information to you when trying to get a particular priority onto the and explaining that and wasting that time during our priority setting session this coming weekend. So that's why we really wanted to kind of finish things up and get this in front of it, get this report out into this meeting here before the priority setting session took place. So we're not authorized to make direct recommendations for implementing any of the recommendations we've done here because we're only 2 out of our 5. So yeah, and then as far as whether this is the end of the committee or not, I would recommend that we hold on that decision until after we make it through, and then it would be up to the council to decide whether we should, if there's other stuff that they want us to go out and do, or if we should end the committey.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
those are my thoughts.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
So yeah, it's all what Councilmember Hamilton said, and we were kind of constrained with this time as we're coming forward. And so normally, like we did with the traffic safety parking committees, ad hoc subcommittees for the residential parking permit program, we met first, and then we met with staff, and we didn't have that opportunity really to meet with staff. This is I think the first step, and we realize how busy staff is, and there's no way they're going to be able to do everything. So we're trying to find out how we could get it to a certain point and then break it down. But we can't do any of that without council's full authority to say that yes, we want to continue forward. So I think it's just timely, and willing to continue to do whatever I can to assist in doing any of the research. It worked out pretty well, and yeah, this was good and fun, right, Tom?
Oh yeah, a lot of fun.
Any other?
Getting our hands dirty.
But we somehow never used "Let's Talk Trash" as part of the listening campaign, and that was a huge miss.
Any other questions or comments from council? Again, thank you to both. But since we have you right now, if Councilmember Hamilton or Vice Mayor Medina, if you have anything else under council comments that you personally would wanted to communicate, why don't we take that opportunity now?
I would just like to. I'll probably be a broken record on this one, but I just wanted to take an opportunity to remind everyone that we're seeing, as we saw earlier with the COVID presentation, we're seeing lots of successes, and we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But that now is not the time to slack off on or to pull back on any of the safety measures that we've all gotten really good at over the past year. Wearing your mask, limiting your gatherings, all that. We're at the opportunity now where we can put this away. So we have to. And just keep it. Please, I encourage everybody to keep that in mind. And when you have the opportunity to get the vaccine, go get it. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, I second that, Tom. To everyone, just continue. We're doing great. There's no reason to just think that it's fine now and you can resort back to normal behavior. It's going to go on for a little bit longer, a while longer. We have schools opening in San Bruno yesterday, the full opening for most of the schools, I'm saying. The private schools, I think, have been open for a while. And my second message with that is everybody who's dropping off their kids, please take an extra 5 minutes to planning on getting to school. Everybody's in a rush, and be patient when you're dropping off and picking up your children. The kids are really excited. I was at Bel Air today and seeing part of that. There's true joy in some of these kids, and so take it easy when you're picking them up, and there's some people that still kind of want to speed by. So that's my point. Let's stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to item B. Linda Mason, Stronger Governance 2020 Strategic Priority Implementation Update Request.
All right. So thank you, Mayor Medina. So we're now hitting our 1-year anniversary since our last strategic priorities meeting, and so I think it would be great to have an update on where we are with this particular one, just because I think this one has had a lot of movement. Just from what I could jot down, there was more Brown Act trainings, there were new committees formed, there's kind of a review going on of the committees that we have. And then the council has probably already spent 8 hours reviewing the policies and procedures. And there may be some others too, but I think it would be great to provide some kind of a report out at some point to the public on what we've done and what exactly, strong governance means, as far as not just this vague, large umbrella statement. I also just wanted to mention that as we continue in the strong governance, I think that one of the areas that was brought up last year that we really haven't gone into depth is I had talked about a charge for each committee. And so in the same way that the committee goes upwards, so the committee goes to staff, staff goes to city manager comes to the council also has the ability to do it the other way, where we give each committee a charge, maybe on an annual basis or whatever it may be. And I think that would be something that I'm hoping we're going to look into further. I also wanted to talk about when we talk about strong governance on Wednesday at the TSPC committee. I was kind of taken aback to see some of the rules that were being either in place or maybe they were being reminded. I really don't know. But there was like a 4-part test on when an item can be agendized. And I don't recall that coming to the council. And so I guess part of the stronger governance update request is, are these rules new? Are they being implemented and shared across all committees? And my opinion is that council should be reviewing them and on board with those before they go to the committees. But I could be wrong in the sense that maybe they've always been the rules. I didn't see them when I was on the planning commission, and I haven't seen them before in any of the committee meetings that I've been at. So, and then just like there's some little things that I think we can do that I've mentioned, I think before, just in conversations. But I really think that the agendas should have public comment written in everywhere we have public comment, so that it's clear to the public that there's going to be a public comment opportunity. The committee report out. I've seen other cities and other commissions have a committee report out actually on the agenda. So it doesn't mean every single committee reports out that the council's on. It just means that that's the council's opportunity to report out on a committee if they would like to do so. And then the last thing, and this I've brought up and I'm bringing it up today again to reiterate it, but I really feel strongly that our closed sessions should have the Zoom link on them. The closed sessions for many meetings have not. I've expressed concern around this. I think that we should be maximizing the opportunity that the public has to comment, and most of the time the public doesn't comment on closed session items. So it really doesn't hurt to offer the Zoom link to the public to be able to make a comment before we go into closed session. So those are, I think, some low-hanging fruit that we can quickly implement, but I also think it's worth it to just give the public an update on where we are with this, because I do think a lot of work has been done in the last year around strong governance. And then, Mayor Medina, should I go ahead and make any other comments at this time as well?
Why don't we pause if it's okay, and just see if anybody had any questions or comments, and then if it's okay, we'll come back, and then you can finish with anything else. Colleagues, anything? At this time. Doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it Friday or Saturday, but I mean just from what Councilmember Mason just spoke of.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Medina?
Yes. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that I would think that we would find some time in this weekend. We're not going to have time to dive into any subject this deep, as we have a limited number of hours actually meeting to talk about setting the priorities. So we should be, I guess this question would be to the city manager of when, well, I guess we have to have the meeting first to decide when we're actually going to do this, Councilmember Mason, to where we set that priority. We made progress, yes, with the policy and procedures for the city council, and there's still work to get done, because we started from scratch and putting these procedures together. It takes a lot of work.
If you're asking me, I would actually just say that I don't know that we are going to spend a lot of time on it on Saturday. I feel like this was a priority last year. I think it's a continuing priority. I don't think that it needs to be reprioritized. I think it would be great to get an update of where we are. And I don't know that it has to happen on Saturday, but I think it would be good to have an update so that the public is aware of the measures that have been taken. And then we continue having the conversation as the year goes on. I don't know that I'm saying that I don't think this should become a lesser priority. It's continuing implementation as we go.
Councilmember Hamilton?
So I would agree with that. I was about to say something similar. So I'm supportive of continuing these efforts and of us finding the time to have these important conversations as we go forward. Not necessarily on Saturday, as Marty said. I'm concerned that we're not going to have enough time to get through what we need to get through on was today.
Agreed. Makes sense. Okay. Thank you for the report, or thank you for your comments. But back to Councilmember Mason.
Yeah, so I actually just wanted to give a kudos to San Mateo and Councilwoman Amo Lee. I'm really excited that today on the front page, San Mateo has decided to take on campaign finance reform. I had hoped we would do it last year, but there were so many priorities, it didn't get the support needed. But I am excited to see it on the front page today, and I'm excited to see them taking on this leadership role in the county. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Salazar, do you have any council comments tonight?
So Tom and I had a little community meeting a little over a week ago, and it was a really great event. We had some pretty good turnout and some good conversations that went on. So I wanted to thank Tom for partnering with me on that, and also wanted to thank the members of the public that attended. And there were a couple of things that came out of that, and some of that. It really ties into what Linda just talked about in terms of what we can do with our committees and commissions, because I had some ideas based on suggestions that were made on some things that we could potentially task the TSPC with, namely around the idea was proposed of having like an adopted drain sort of thing for our storm drain systems. And where that really ties into parking, it seemed appropriate that we might have the TSPC take a lead on that, just like our Park and Rec Commission took the lead on the Adopt a Park, and they were very successful in putting that together. And then also we discussed, what's going on with our parking permit program and the lack of interest and lack of ability to get anything moving on that. And so again, I thought maybe it would be appropriate to send that back to TSPC for a review, just to see where we are and what the issues are, where the roadblocks are, and see if there's a way to revisit that and tweak that program now that we've had it in place for a while. So I wanted to throw that out there. I don't know that that's going to be something we get to on this weekend's discussion, but I did want to kind of plant that seed and see if that's something that we can start working toward as part of the broader program. So that was it for me.
Thanks. I thought I would have more information on March 3rd. I attended a ad hoc committee for the county. It's a small business entrepreneur and workforce recovery plan from the COVID. And it went to the Board of Supervisors today with its recommendations from the committee that I serve on. And they approved some, but not all. A couple items are coming back. So I will report back when it all has circled itself around, but it's offering probably in South San Francisco, a North County place for small businesses to go and get assistance and other funding and programs of how to encourage shopping in your own community, how to leverage that, how to give people points that they can redeem. So it was a lot of time that was spent. But the board, rightfully so, had a few additional questions. So when I get more, I'll let you know. And I just want to thank everybody, staff and council, for a good discussion. And we talked about the committee, commissions, and boards, and certainly that's why at times we have certainly gone to them, and there is nothing wrong with that. We have done that with the Park and Rec, whether it was about the dog leash, right, and the trial. So there's a lot of things we can task, and I think it's important that they signed up to be use their experience, their knowledge, just like Councilmember Salazar said. The Parks and Rec Commission goes and actually tours a park, fills out a sheet, turns it back in of what's may need improvement, what's not, but it's a great thing that everybody can be a part of. So there are a lot of opportunities for folks, and I think they would love to have that. I know when I served on bodies, I liked being asked, how can we do this? And then use what I signed up for. So with that said, I want to thank everybody again and staff. And I was going to say, have a good week, but we're going to see each other in a couple days. So we will be back together again. But until then, please stay safe and healthy. And we will then adjourn to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on March 23rd, 2021 at 7 p.m. And yes, it will be virtual. And everyone enjoy, be safe. And, it's been raining hard, so hopefully everybody stays dry. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.